Greetings, everyone. This evening, we embark on a journey through the extraordinary endurance of medieval peasants, individuals who faced the relentless trials of plagues, wars, taxes, and, inevitably, famine, often all within the span of a single week. Before you settle in, I invite you to take a moment to show your appreciation for the video and join our community, but only if what I share resonates with you. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Share where you're joining us from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's always a delight to see the diverse places our audience comes from. Now, let us lower the lights, perhaps activate a fan to create a gentle, soothing hum, and prepare to embark on tonight's adventure together. Allow me to paint the picture. In a time long past, you find yourself among the humble folk of the land, toiling under the sun's watchful gaze. Your name likely carries an air of excitement, perhaps something enchanting like Ildred or Maud. With just a single shirt, a lone tooth, and a singular dream, your journey begins. May this year's barley harvest stand strong and true, unlike the treachery of your cousin during last year's sheep wrestling contest. Yet, as fate would have it, weather, pests, and the unpredictable arrival of a Viking may have their own designs. The second year has dawned upon us, marked by a relentless cycle of crop failures. The wheat has staged a rebellion, the oats have run away with mildew, and the only thing flourishing in your field is a deep-seated bitterness. In the medieval world, famine was not an uncommon visitor. It arrived with the seasons, much like taxes, but with a grimmer presence and a sharper sting. In the years of 1315 to 1317, a great famine descended upon Europe, enveloping the land like a ravenous mist. Heavy rains devastated the fields, livestock perished in their own meadows, and grain prices soared quicker than the whispers of sorcery from the neighbors. Once upon a time, the very first thing to vanish was bread. And when bread vanishes, so too does the facade of security. Grain served as the very foundation of the peasants' sustenance, not due to its exceptional flavor, but rather because it was somewhat palatable and less prone to retaliate. So, what tale unfolded when the granary resonated like a sacred space on that Monday morning? You created on the spot. As the chill of late autumn settles in, a curious turn of events unfolds. Your final goat has vanished into thin air, only for you to discover a rather unsettling sight, its legs simmering away in your neighbor's stew pot. Serendipity? Improbable. Welcome to Famine Logic, a realm where every morsel with calories transforms into either a feast or a potential foe. In typical times, livestock represented your fortune, your influence, and your ever-present source of cheese. Yet, during a year of famine, they became the final option, each bearing a name. Once upon a time, there were chickens, vanished. Once upon a time, there were pigs, toasted to perfection. Once upon a time, there were sheep, consumed until the very last note. Your gaze lingered on the ox, not for the sake of meat, but because the act of plowing the fields began to seem like a choice, overshadowed by the pressing need to endure until the next week. And then, from the shadows, the rats made their entrance. In truth, they had always been present. Yet now their actions had escalated beyond mere grain theft. They were transforming into grain. In a spirited display of ingenuity, the villagers set about crafting traps, igniting torches, and unleashing their creativity. A skewer of rat perfectly roasted over an open flame. Once upon a time, there was a humble concoction known as rat broth, a delightful blend of rat and turnip simmered to perfection in a cozy casserole. Should it twitch and scurry, it had now joined the ranks of the protein pyramid. Not even the cats were spared. Once upon a time, Fluffy would curl up and nap on your haystack, but now a curious absence surrounds the little one, and the pot wafts its enticing aroma. Unique. In their darkest hour, the peasants found themselves reaching for things they would have never considered in times of ordinary hardship. Once upon a time, in a world filled with wonder, there lived a creature known for its unique charm and delightful quills. These little beings, often shy yet endearing, roamed the underbrush, weaving tales of adventure and curiosity. Their small, round bodies and gentle demeanor made them a beloved part of the woodland tapestry, inviting all who encountered them to pause and appreciate the magic of nature. Delightfully crisp, once upon a time, in a world bustling with life, there existed a lively community of squirrels. These nimble creatures danced through the trees, their bushy tails flickering like whispers in the wind. Each day was an adventure, filled with the thrill of foraging and the joy of playful chases among the branches. Their stories intertwined, creating a tapestry of camaraderie and mischief that echoed through the forest. Adventurous. Once upon a time, in a world filled with vibrant green ponds and lush vegetation, there lived a chorus of frogs, each with their own tale to tell, unexpectedly elegant if one can overlook the cacophony. But let us not delve into the world of snails just yet. In the land of France, they refer to it as escargot. In the days of yore, the humble folk of the medieval era simply referred to it as Wednesday. Preservation transformed into a shadowy craft. Preserving meat with salt? The longing for something just out of reach. The cost of salt was simply too high. In the flickering glow of the fire, with wood crackling and the rich aroma of bone stew wafting through the air, the act of smoking took on a deeper significance. It became a moment of solace, a way to mask the tears that threatened to spill, as the story of the evening unfolded around the warmth of the flames. In the midst of turmoil, certain monasteries extended a hand of hope. They possessed superior provisions, and the common folk could barter their toil, allegiance, or even mere quietude for a comforting bowl of sustenance. Others engaged in fervent exchanges, presenting eggs that were mere figments of imagination, or arranging marriages for cousins with unfamiliar faces in return for the promise of soup. Indeed, within certain chronicles, there are whispers of the act of consuming human flesh. Yet that was often just the neighboring village. Yours naturally merely contemplated it. Amidst the chaos, whispers spread swifter than the wheels of a cart. A pig was seen 2 miles off in the distance, a trader of rye, a noble soul who may share their remnants of feasts. Hope was weighed in whispers and fragments, and if your faithful companion still graces your life, well done to you. It was a matter of having the strength to hold back, or being outpaced by his swift actions. In the beginning, there was the seed grain, the share you were meant to reserve for the coming season. A daring choice, as if savoring the final morsel of a chess piece while the game slips away into defeat. Yet in the grip of desperation, one rarely charts a course for the future. Then you shifted your focus to alternatives. Barley bread transformed into bark bread, in the most precise sense. Imagine taking tree bark, transforming it into a fine flour, and then blending it into a rich, hearty dough. The essence? Like navigating the twists and turns of a particularly daunting agreement. And so it was that boiled weeds, acorns, and, in the most desperate of times, shoe leather stew made their appearance. Not for the flavor. Additional delights for the palate. In the heart of the bustling town, a few humble souls ventured forth, seeking alms from passers-by. Some took what wasn't theirs. Some particularly ambitious souls sought refuge in monasteries, drawn by the promise of free soup and the weight of eternal guilt. Enduring a famine was not a tale of flourishing. It was a tale of endurance against the neighbor next door, ideally the one who carried the scent of turnips and seemed a tad too fascinated by your feline companion. As the chill of late autumn settles in, a curious event unfolds. Your last goat has vanished into thin air. Unless you discovered its legs simmering in your neighbor's stew pot. Serendipity? Improbable. Welcome to famine logic, where every morsel with calories takes on the role of either a feast or a potential foe. In typical times, livestock represented your fortune, your influence, and your ever-present source of cheese. Yet, during a year of famine, these were the final meals, each bearing a name. Once upon a time, there were chickens, vanished. Once upon a time, there were pigs, toasted to perfection. Once upon a time, there were gentle creatures that roamed the lush green fields, their woolly coats glistening under the warm sun. These sheep, with their soft bleats and curious eyes, painted a serene picture of pastoral life. Devoured until only the bell remains, your gaze lingered on the ox, not for the sake of meat, but because the act of plowing the fields began to seem like a choice, overshadowed by the pressing need to simply endure until the next week. And then, like shadows creeping in the night, the rats arrived. In truth, they had always been present. Yet their actions had escalated beyond mere grain theft. They were transforming into grain. In a time of uncertainty, the humble folk took to their wits, crafting clever traps, igniting torches, and unleashing their ingenuity. A skewer of roasted rat sizzling over the flames. Once upon a time, there was a humble concoction known as rat broth, a delightful blend of rat and turnip, simmered to perfection in a cozy casserole. Should it twitch and scurry, it had now joined the ranks of the protein pyramid. Not even the cats were spared. Once upon a time, Fluffy would curl up and nap on your haystack. But now, a shadow of mystery looms as Fluffy has vanished without a trace, and the pot wafts its enticing aroma, distinct. In their darkest hour, the peasants found themselves reaching for things they would have never considered in times of ordinary hardship. Once upon a time, in a world filled with wonder, there lived a creature known for its spines and charm. The hedgehog. These delightful beings roamed the meadows and forests, weaving tales of adventure and curiosity. Each night, under the twinkling stars, they would embark on journeys exploring the secrets of their enchanting habitat. Delightfully crisp. Once upon a time, in a world bustling with life, there existed a charming creature known as the squirrel, adventurous. Once upon a time, in a world filled with vibrant greenery and shimmering waters, there lived a chorus of frogs. Their croaks echoed through the night, weaving tales of adventure and mystery under the moonlit sky. Unexpectedly elegant if one can overlook the cacophony. But let us not delve into the world of snails just yet. In the land of France, they refer to it as escargot. In the days of yore, the humble folk of the land simply referred to it as Wednesday. The craft of preservation took on a shadowy allure. The art of salting meat, a desire that lingers in the air. The cost of salt was prohibitively high. Smoking felt more authentic, especially when you had wood, a fire, and a reason to mask the tears falling into your bone stew. In the shadows of despair, certain monasteries emerged as beacons of hope. In the heart of the village, where the scent of hearty meals wafted through the air, the food stores stood as a beacon of hope. Here, peasants would barter their toil, their unwavering loyalty, or even the simple gift of silence, all for the comfort of a warm bowl that promised solace and sustenance. Others engaged in fervent exchanges, presenting eggs that were mere figments of imagination, or arranging unions of cousins with unfamiliar faces in return for the promise of soup. Indeed, within certain accounts, there are whispers of the act of consuming human flesh. Yet that was often just the neighboring village away. Yours, naturally, merely contemplated it. Amidst the chaos, whispers spread like wildfire, outpacing even the swiftest of carts. A pig was seen 2 miles in the distance, a trader of fine rye, a generous soul who may share their surplus fare. Hope was a delicate balance of whispers and remnants, and if your faithful companion still walks by your side, well done to you. One could either possess a sense of moral restraint or find themselves outpaced by his swiftness. Gather round, for I have a tale to share about the humble loaf of bread. Once upon a time there was a humble loaf, the humble companion of the peasant, and at times its silent executioner. In a year of famine, the grain was not merely in short supply, it took on an unsettling and peculiar nature. Should you have stumbled upon rye or wheat, it was likely that it had been resting in a musty barn for an age, perhaps even years. But you never inquired about its origins. But you never inquired about the subtle glow it emitted. You offered your gratitude to the skies above and hurriedly attempted to capture it before it slipped away into the ether. Behold the arrival of ergot, a fungus that thrived in the embrace of damp rye. In the days of yore, the people of the medieval era were unaware of the term itself. Yet they were aware of its consequences. Muscle spasms, visions that dance in the mind's eye, fiery feelings, and the delightful twist of shedding limbs like whimsical medieval building blocks. Ergot poisoning, often referred to as St. Anthony's fire, evokes a sense of the extraordinary, as if nothing could be more miraculous than bread that ignites your veins in flames. Indeed, the very thing you relied on to remain steadfast turned its back on you. Once more, the act of baking proved to be of no assistance. In times of hardship, the communal ovens stood as solemn witnesses, echoing the sorrows of the peasants who gathered, their hopes flickering like the flames within, each one sharing a silent tale of despair. With your peculiar bloom in hand, you carried the weight of your sorrowful aspirations, patiently anticipating the arrival of something that might resemble nourishment. What emerged was often thick, charred, and as welcoming as a brick burdened by neglect. Yet it was bread. In a way, yes, provided it remained still. In a time of great need, some weary hearts sought to extend their meager provisions with ingredients that were not sustenance. Once there was clay. Once upon a time, there was a simple piece of chalk, crushed remnants of the past. Soft and verdant, it blankets the forest floor, a gentle whisper of nature's embrace. Though its nutritional worth was minimal, it brought forth a crunchy, medieval texture that evoked both disdain and trepidation in all who encountered it. It was the children who fell ill first, then the wise ones, then the mighty, for famine knows no bounds. It simply lines you up in its relentless march. In a twist of fate, it was those with the most inferior bread who found themselves faring just a bit better. If your loaf was filled with bark and sorrow, it likely wasn't tainted with poison, only fragments. Whispers of anticipation filled the air as individuals started to seek out omens. When a neighbor began to twitch mid-sentence or proclaimed that the Virgin Mary instructed him to lick a turnip, it was clear that the bread needed to be discarded and dinner plans reconsidered. In villages where priests dwelled, the distinction between sin and tainted grain became indistinct. Could it be a form of celestial retribution? Or perhaps it was simply a tale of unfortunate baking. In any case, the bread you consumed held the power to nourish you, to make you unwell, or even to bring about your demise. At times, it happens that all three converge in a single moment. With the fields lying barren, the bread bearing an ominous mark, and the creatures of the wild mysteriously vanished. The moment had come to fully adopt the ways of the forest gremlin. Step into the enchanting world of foraging, where the echoes of medieval times beckon you to explore. Neither fashionable baskets nor botanical tomes are present. In the heart of the woods, it's just you and the whispering trees, accompanied by a tantalizing thought that this peculiar mushroom could very well be your next meal, or fate's dark embrace. In the heart of the countryside, the peasants possessed an intimate knowledge of their surroundings, a wisdom that surpassed even the most advanced modern GPS systems, not for mere pastime, but out of necessity, as they needed to recall which plant created a delightful soup and which one caused your mouth to froth like an irate goose. The path was paved with lessons learned through experience. Highlighting the mistake, nettles emerged as a favored choice. Once boiled thoroughly and tamed into submission, they could be consumed without causing any discomfort from within. Leaves of the dandelion? Sharp in flavor, yet still consumable. In the heart of the forest, wild garlic whispers its secrets, a fragrant treasure hidden among the leaves. A lavish indulgence. It cloaked the aroma of profound unease. In the quiet corners of the earth, some souls sought sustenance from the depths of the soil, unearthing burdock, parsnips, and any treasures they could coax from the ground, all while keeping a wary eye on the watchful badgers nearby. The mushrooms presented a greater challenge. With a single bite, you might find yourself either sustained or whisked away on a fantastical odyssey filled with fiery goats and conversing clouds, and thus refunds were nowhere to be found. Ah, the delightful allure of berries. Absolutely, if you're up for the yearly challenge of discerning whether it's poison or simply exceptionally sour. A miscalculated guess sent your stomach into a tumultuous uproar, while your spirit wandered off into the unknown. The tree bark made its triumphant return to the menu once more. Elm bark could be transformed into a fine flour-like powder. In the realm of nature's wonders, pine needles brewed a delightful tea, perfect for those who embraced the spirit of the forest. Some even nibbled on reeds and grass, which, if we're being truthful, is merely sorrow manifested in the guise of greenery. Young ones were frequently dispatched to gather provisions, not due to their skill, but rather because of their size, allowing them to slip between the thorny brambles with ease. Furthermore, if they failed to come back, It was a clear sign to avoid whatever they had chosen. In the community, the revered local sages, often regarded as unofficial botanists with remarkably pristine smiles, found themselves in great demand. Their wisdom regarding the life-sustaining herbs often ensured the survival of entire villages. Naturally, they found themselves facing accusations of witchcraft, for humanity has often struggled to express true gratitude. Foraging lacked the allure one might expect. It was clawing its way to existence from the edges. Each meal was a game of chance with the wild, and the wild often held the winning hand. When the forest offered no sustenance and your bread turned against you, the only sensible course was to seek refuge in the most powerful force of medieval existence, the weight of community expectations and the art of negotiating with the divine. Let us begin with the tales of your neighbors. In ordinary moments, you would share whispers and tales, perhaps a chicken then, perhaps your cousin by marriage. During the harsh days of famine, every possession became a bargaining chip. And I truly mean anything, a shattered instrument, a worn and tattered tunic, the peculiar rock shaped like a goat that you firmly believe brings good fortune. If it procured you a modest half of a turnip, then it was indeed a triumph. The village transformed into a lively hub of exchange and trade. Trade me a warm bowl of soup and I'll mend your roof with care. If you grant me the chance to nibble on that onion, I'll gladly take care of your little ones. All things held significance, save for currency. Wealth belonged to the nobility. In the bustling realm of the common folk, the exchange of onions, whispered favors, and veiled threats wove the fabric of their daily lives. Yet, when even the neighbors found themselves without, the only recourse left was to seek the aid of the heavens, step into the sacred space of the church. In the heart of the town, the medieval churches stood as the most nourished structures, their grandeur reflecting the care and devotion bestowed upon them. In their midst stood tithes, grain stores, wine cellars, and an abbot whose girth raised a few eyebrows. As you were busy gnawing on bark, the monastery continued to indulge in salted fish and wine, for it seemed that the divine had a taste for fermented opulence. Thus the humble folk engaged in the tasks they knew so well. They pleaded earnestly. One might find solace in prayer, naturally. Yet it was beneficial if you also took the time to sweep the floors, shared your last egg, or gave away that one relic your uncle insisted was the genuine finger of St. Jerome. It was not. Once upon a time there lay a solitary chicken bone. But hush now. In exchange you may receive a warm bowl of soup, or if fortune smiles upon you, a slice of bread free from visions. The clergy understood that hunger had a way of drawing the faithful closer, and there was no quicker way to fill the pews than by the pangs of an empty belly. Wills were transformed anew. In a time long past, individuals offered parcels of their land to the church, seeking not only divine blessings, but perhaps a simple meal in return. Some individuals embraced monastic life wholeheartedly, for the comfort of porridge and the soothing sound of chanting made the pangs of hunger a bit more bearable. Yet not every member of the clergy displayed generosity. Some have advised you to fast and place your faith in divine mercy, which is a rather polite way of saying, "Best of luck with that, humble one." Yet the churches transformed into makeshift sanctuaries of support, offering a sermon, a wafer, and the hopeful promise that the hunger of today would lead to a banquet in the afterlife, perhaps. As the fields withered, the forest succumbed to thirst, and the church soup turned into a mere notion of sustenance. In a world where choices dwindled, the peasants found themselves with but a singular path to tread. Take a step forward. Simply gather your things and embark on a new journey. Gather your little ones, your trusty goat and that resilient pot that has withstood the trials of time, and set forth on a quest to seek sustenance everywhere. In the days of yore, the humble peasants of the medieval era were not often driven by a desire to roam far and wide. Many souls entered this world, exchanged vows, and departed, all within a stone's throw of the same humble dung heap. Yet the specter of famine altered the narrative entirely. In an unexpected twist, that dubious whisper from the neighboring valley, word had it that Dunwich still held oats, shone like a guiding light. or at the very least offered a reprieve from the grim prospect of gnawing on your own belt once more. And thus, their journey began. It lacked the allure one might expect. Gone were the days of vibrant caravans filled with lively tunes and colorful cloaks. Instead, weary families made their way along the sodden trails, evading lurking wolves and the watchful eyes of local barons, all the while yearning for a village that still had its cats to spare. Some nobles sought to halt the wandering, not from a place of concern, but rather because desolate fields signified a lack of subjects to pay taxes or fall in yet another feudal conflict. Thus, the laws concerning vagrancy came into being. Translation: you're not embracing the art of hunger properly. Return to your abode and execute it with care and precision. Some extended a warm embrace to those seeking refuge, particularly the nobles who possessed vast estates yet lacked the hands to cultivate them. Should you possess robust arms and a visage free from the marks of affliction, you may find yourself welcomed into another's realm. The journey through the interview process unfolded with ease. Are you able to wield a scythe with skill? Are you able to unearth the truth? Are you willing to feast on rats without a word of discontent? Wonderful, it's a pleasure to have you join us. Yet the act of moving carried its own set of dangers. Unfamiliar with the customs, the dialect, and uncertain if the local priest deemed your accent as something sinister, you found yourself in a world that felt both strange and intriguing. Many found themselves in towns that resembled modern cities, yet were marked by a cacophony of noise, a layer of grime, and an ever-present flicker of flames. In that place, one could find a certain dignity in the art of begging, as it became a path to survival. Some surrendered completely, transforming into outlaws, poachers, or wandering prophets, proclaiming tales of divine turnips and miraculous wheat. Famine served as a powerful equalizer. In a world where desperation reigned, all were united in their grime and their wariness of the mysterious beef stew. With nary a cow to be found, ultimately, the journey became a final option, a daring leap into the unknown. You may have discovered a new existence, or perhaps merely a different setting to face hardship, with a touch more flair. As the 6th month of famine unfolds, the very essence of food starts to fade into obscurity. You've consumed the bread, the porridge, the goat, arep bliti, and perhaps even your dignity. What remains is what historians tactfully refer to as famine foods, while medieval peasants might have just called it, quite plainly, Tuesday. Once upon a time, we begin our journey with the texture of tree bark. Once more, it surfaces frequently. Folks weren't gnawing on timber like the industrious beavers of the wild. They would carefully strip away the inner layer, known as the cambium, then dry it, grind it into a fine powder, and blend it with whatever flour was available. The outcome? Bark bread. It may evoke the charm of a trendy cafe offering, yet its flavor resembles the earthiness of mulch, cloaked in a sense of longing. And so, the tale brings us to the grass cakes. No, not the kind that your cousin enjoys inhaling. Weeds, moss, or straw gathered from the earth, blended with water, and left to dry under the warm embrace of the sun. It carried the weight of remorse and offered the sustenance of a worn-out sock. But having something to chew on is certainly better than having nothing at all. Ah, the allure of leather. All is fair in the game. Worn boots, sturdy belts, and rugged harnesses. After a good boil, they transformed into a chewy, salty delight, teetering on the edge of danger, yet remaining mostly harmless. In the days of yore, the recipes for hearty stews often left the specifics of animal ingredients shrouded in mystery. If it had once donned a buckle, it was destined for the bubbling pot. Felines, canines, and rodents. In those days, being a household pet was far from a fortunate fate during the trials of famine. Rats, in particular, transformed into a sought-after delicacy, simple to snare, simple to cook, and with a bit of imagination. One might convince themselves it resembled chicken, or at the very least not a rat. Individuals unleashed their imagination with bones. One could simmer them for hours, coaxing out their essence to create a rich, flavorful broth. If you had already boiled them last week, then you found yourself boiling them once more. From bone broth to bone tea, a journey that spiraled into bone sadness. The most troubling of all were the grains tainted by ergot, They appeared ordinary, either rye or wheat, yet concealed a delightful hallucinogenic fungus within their midst. Among the signs were episodes of vomiting, the ominous spread of gangrene, and on occasion a peculiar compulsion to dance until one's last breath. While it may not have been perfect, there were certainly villagers who found joy in the spectacle, and then, as if by magic, there appeared foods of wonder. Roots that induced a retch but spared your life, lichens that bore a curious likeness to cheese and if fortune smiled upon you, a solitary apple that had managed to evade its transformation into a buzzing haven for intoxicated wasps. In essence, the medieval menu during times of famine resembled a dwindling game of chance, where each choice posed the question of survival, accompanied by a hint of uncertainty. Famine was not merely a difficult period for sustenance. It was, indeed, a most unfortunate moment to depart from this world. Regrettably, many individuals fell into that trap, gradually, with great difficulty, and frequently in a manner that left others questioning. "Would you be so kind as to let me borrow your boots?" In the tapestry of medieval life, the bond between peasants and death was woven with intricate threads of fear, reverence, and acceptance. On one side, it lingered in the air, always there. On the other hand, the grip of famine tightened its hold. Yet, even in the depths of hunger, a grand farewell was a luxury you could not indulge in. In the dim light of the room, the air was thick with the sounds of struggle. Coughs and groans filled the space, punctuated by a desperate whisper, begging for a repeat of a past mishap to be avoided. Please, not in the soup pot again. Burial customs needed to evolve. Typically, one would receive a gentle covering, a handful of heartfelt prayers, perhaps even a touch of sorrowful lamentation. In the midst of a famine, the art of efficiency became paramount. Communal graves emerged as a prevalent practice, not from a place of shared camaraderie, but rather because the toil of digging graves is wearisome, and no one had the energy to waste on solitary farewells. Clerics endeavored to preserve the sanctity of all that surrounded them. The final farewell came in haste. Whispers of secrets were hurriedly shared in fleeting moments. "Forgive me, Father, for I have wandered." "Quiet now. Just give a subtle nod if it was indeed quite a bit." Time waits for no one. In a world where the innocence of children hung delicately, the hearts of grieving parents were compelled to forge ahead, despite the weight of their sorrow. In certain areas, it was customary to name the next child after the one who had passed just the week before, a practice reminiscent of a medieval tradition. Dark, indeed, functional. Indeed, that is correct. Furthermore, yet there was a time when death was not shrouded in sorrow. In the dark irony of hunger, the passing of a neighbor signified not just a loss, but also one fewer mouth to nourish and perhaps a blanket to keep warm. It may seem callous, yet after your fourth meal of boiled clover and visions that dance before your eyes, the concept of morality transforms into a mere indulgence. Some peasants even embraced the dance macabre art, creating whimsical little illustrations of skeletons joyfully dancing jigs. It was more than mere dark amusement. It was a journey of healing. If the end was inevitable, one might as well envision him breaking into a dance, perhaps even the worm. And then came the genuine survivalists, those who remained in the shadows. The gaunt peasants, their eyes hollow and their resilience akin to that of cockroaches. They had witnessed 3 plagues, encountered 2 lords, and experienced 1 cow rebellion. Their tale would not conclude with famine. Perhaps. Famine swept across the land, leaving not just barren fields in its wake. It toppled the medieval social pyramid as if it were a clumsy game of Jenga, each piece precariously shifting in a dance of chaos. And if you believed your local baron was miserly before the crops withered, just wait until you see him doling out turnips as if they were precious gems. To begin our tale, we must delve into the realm of lords. One might assume that a famine would bring the nobility down a peg or two. It simply did not. In numerous instances, it heightened the drama. Imagine this. Amidst the withering fields where your peasants toil, the local lord, in a display of misplaced grandeur, chooses this moment of despair to host a lavish banquet instead of easing their burdens or sharing the grain they so desperately need, for his own sake, with the rich flavors of venison and melodies. Perhaps a performer of many talents as well. What is the reason behind this? For what could better exemplify the divine right of kings than parading your final pig before a crowd of hungry villagers? Yet, the days were not solely filled with grand banquets and thrilling duels. There were indeed some lords who, with noble intentions, sought to lend a hand by providing alms, arranging for grain imports, or at the very least, refraining from pilfering your ox. These rare paragons were cherished in memory for a fleeting moment, only to be overshadowed by the impending tax collection that followed. And so we come to the clergy. Monasteries would sometimes unveil their stores, offering the less fortunate remnants of cheese and a sprinkle of goodwill. Yet, amidst this benevolence, some seized the famine as a chance to enhance their own fortunes. Hunger gnawing at your insides? Perhaps that's the voice of your transgressions speaking. Offer your land to the church, and in return, we shall lift our prayers fervently for the blessing of rain. The lives of the peasants were limited in choices. They might plead, negotiate, or rise up in defiance. Revolts seldom achieved their intended goals, yet they offered a vigorous workout and a change of scenery, often leading to the depths of the dungeon. Famine sparked a wave of moral panic. In an instant, those who weren't on the brink of starvation found themselves filled with doubt, gathering treasures. Once upon a time, in a realm shrouded in mystery, there existed an ancient practice known as witchcraft, veiled in the charm of a hidden heritage. Who can say? When your cheeks appeared just a tad too round, the world around you began to cast glances, sizing you up like a curious observer of a peculiar delicacy. And let us not overlook the intriguing world of marriage markets. As the sands of time slipped away, families hurriedly sought to unite their children in marriage, fearing they might become mere victims of fate. Dowries were trimmed to a mere half-sack of oats and a spoon with just the right amount of spectral charm. Yet, amid the turmoil, the peasants discovered fleeting sparks of defiance. Whispers of clandestine foraging gatherings, communal feasts featuring enigmatic stew, and the sporadic witty etching upon a barn wall. Once upon a time, there was a noble creature known as Sir Geoffrey who happened to be a donkey. Let's be honest, after half a year of gnawing on tree bark, hiding from your neighbors, and enduring your Lord's sermons on the heavenly diet, your mind begins to fray at the edges. Famine did not merely deplete the body, it drained the spirit. In a time when medieval peasants lacked the comforts of therapists and scented candles, they had to weave their own tales of resilience for psychological survival. Some immersed themselves in devotion, attending every mass, lighting every candle, and fervently believing that their pleas would sway the Almighty to lift the drought. Some believed the famine was a consequence of moral failings, conveniently attributing blame to others, often women, outsiders, or that overly cheerful neighbor down the street. Superstitions thrived, creeping and spreading like an unwelcome growth on forgotten cheese from the past month. In times of hardship, fingers were pointed at witches for the failing crops, at comets streaking across the sky, or even at that peculiar cloud that bore an uncanny resemblance to a fish. Folk rituals emerged anew, either rekindled from the past or conjured in the moment, yearning for a downpour. Offer a chicken as a gesture of devotion? There is no chicken. Raise your voice to the heavens. Is the sky still withholding its tears? Clearly, the issue lies in your neighbor's lack of volume when expressing themselves. Dreams ventured into shadowy realms as well. When your meals consist mostly of grass and remorse, your mind begins to conjure up strange surprises in the quiet of the night. Humble folk spoke of encounters with saints, demons, or heavenly cows that promised an endless supply of milk, yet it remained elusive. Rising from slumber felt like a cruel twist of fate, a burden heavier than the embrace of dreams. Some peasants embraced a darkly humorous outlook on their plight. You'd jest that your wife's stew was lethal, only to find out it had claimed a life already. Perhaps he was overwhelmed by the taste. A comment would slip out and the laughter would linger just a moment too long. In a world of imagination, children conjured up the concept of famine games. Counting the ribs proved to be less enjoyable than one might expect. Can that be eaten? Transformed into a thrilling contest. And the game of hide-and-seek transformed into a thrilling chase when the debt collectors arrived. Even the art mirrored the essence of the moment. In the margins of manuscripts, one could find whimsical scenes of dancing skeletons, peasants in the throes of vomiting, and nuns engaged in epic battles with snails. Uncertainty shrouded the meaning of the snails, yet it was clear that nuance was not the hallmark of that age. And yet they persevered. In the grand tapestry of existence, there lies an intriguing thread, the relentless spirit of humanity, ever persistent, ever undeterred, weaving its way through trials and tribulations. Even when their meals consist of moss soup and their nightly tales recount the grim tally of lives lost, famine is rarely recalled as a period of creativity, unless one considers the art of boiling moss into soup a leap forward in the culinary world. Yet in a curious twist of fate, the trials faced by medieval peasants often led them to unwittingly discover valuable adaptations. When life hands you no lemons, you discover the hidden treasures among the weeds that are surprisingly edible. What's one of the most unexpected outcomes of years marked by famine? Enhanced composting. Indeed, those who once carelessly discarded refuse by the nearby stream started to understand that their fields flourished a bit more when they ceased to nourish them with hopelessness and literal trash. Some peasants started to rotate their crops with greater care, even though the concept of nutrient depletion was beyond their understanding. It was a simple truth passed down through generations. When beans followed barley, the shadows of loss grew lighter. Satisfactory indeed. In the throes of desperation, an unexpected tapestry of life began to unfold. Once neglected, wild plants, hidden berries, and ancient grains have reclaimed their place at the table. What contemporary trendsetters refer to as ancient grains, those from the medieval era simply called whatever that is. Savor it before it scurries away. Rye, millet, and spelt found their moment in the spotlight as wheat, in its dramatic flair, chose not to flourish. The ways to preserve things have also advanced. In a time of culinary experimentation, individuals took to salting, drying, and smoking anything that bore even a slight resemblance to food, including items that perhaps ought not to have been considered edible at all. In the days of yore, the villagers unearthed a curious truth. When cheese was interred for a time, it would emerge cloaked in a rind, imbued with a character all its own. Could it be consumed? It all hinges on your criteria. Did it ignite a spark of inspiration? Indeed. In times of limited resources, the spirit of collaboration flourished, leading to a harmonious exchange of efforts. Though communal ovens and collective farming had been concepts before, the harsh grip of famine rendered them essential. Should your neighbor possess flour while you have firewood, rejoice. You now hold half a loaf of bread and a delicate bond forged through shared sustenance. Even the structures evolved. The granaries stood fortified and secure. In certain villages, they crafted elevated storehouses, a clever solution to keep moisture at bay. And most crucially, the rats. Those whimsical little adventures of furry creatures that seemed to appear out of nowhere. Quests that no one ever thought to seek out. And perhaps most significantly, famine sparked conversations among the people. The wisdom passed down through generations, revealing the plants that soothed stomach aches, the fields that drained most effectively, and the mushrooms that posed only a mild threat became invaluable treasures. Handed down from grandmother to daughter, reaching out to anyone who remains. Picture this. After a long year of gnawing on tree bark, murmuring invocations to the cabbage deities, and simmering your belt for broth, a vibrant green begins to emerge from the earth. Could it be something to eat? Authentic nourishment, so not touched by a saint's curse or nibbled on by pesky rats? For the humble folk of the medieval era, the arrival of the harvest was not a time for revelry. It felt akin to tentatively rekindling a romance with someone from the past, who promised they had transformed for the better. There was a yearning deep within you, a desire to embrace the possibility. With a glimmer of anticipation, you wished for a change in the tale this time around. Yet, the memories of last winter lingered in your mind. Initially, there was a sense of incredulity. One peasant might remark on the barley's striking confidence, gazing at a promising field as if it had some debt to settle with him. And so superstition emerged. Perhaps it's an illusion. Perhaps it is a barley of a sinister nature. Shall we set it ablaze? Is it truly a blessing? Offer up, Jeff? Yet, in the end, the gnawing hunger triumphed over any lingering doubts. As the harvest appeared secure, the community rallied together, each person diving into their tasks with purpose and swift. In those times, the celebration of the harvest lacked the charm of wine, music, and hayrides that we might envision today. It unfolded as a thrilling contest where every second counted, battling the elements and the neighbor who insisted that field belonged to him. Indeed, grain was collected with the sacredness of cherished treasures. Witnesses were moved to tears by the sight of genuine loaves. Families who had long subsisted on lichen and sharp wit finally gathered around tables, laden with a bounty of flavors. Little ones brought into the world, amidst the famine, experienced the delight of their first true bread, perhaps shedding tears of happiness or in response to the unwelcome crunch of weevils hidden within. The standards of quality control in medieval times were far from stringent. Yet the return of trust was not a simple journey. A multitude of peasants persisted in their hoarding ways. In the shadows of the walls, remnants of stale bread lay concealed, whispering tales of days gone by. Behind the barns, clay pots filled with dried peas lay hidden beneath the earth. A solitary man was said to have tucked away a lone onion, carefully wrapped in cloth, beneath his bed, saving it for a time of need. Was it unusual? Indeed. Did it resonate with you? Indeed. That is correct. In the quiet corners of the land, the villages gathered to weave their plans. Some astute lords took the initiative to establish grain reserves. Some resorted to increasing taxes once more, as if it were clear that if the peasants weren't suffering from hunger, they must be secretly stashing away their coins. That's simply the realm of science. Yet the arrival of food did more than nourish the physical form. It nourished the spirit of hope. Newborns entered the world with greater strength. The humor took on a delightful twist. In a world where simplicity reigned, the humble attire of the peasant, once solely characterized by the drabness of potato sack, began to embrace a hint of vibrancy, often in the earthy tones of brown, yet a hopeful hue of brown. Once the famine had passed, the fields flourished once more, the rats gracefully retreated, and the meals transformed from dubious puddles to hearty bowls of porridge. Medieval peasants engaged in the timeless human ritual that follows the trials of an existential crisis. Their conversations wove a tapestry of thoughts, each thread pulling them deeper into the narrative. In every village there existed those who wove tales of famine. In the dim light of the tavern, the old men would bang their cups on the table, their voices rising as they began. In that dreadful year, I survived on nothing but boiled bark and the urge to share tales. Another might retort, that's insignificant. My uncle slurped soup through a straw crafted from a pig's bone. As these narratives wove their way into the hearts of the next generation, it was said that whole families had taken to the trees, dined on their own hats, or bravely warded off wolves armed only with stale bread and a touch of rudeness. Grandmothers were the unrivaled champions of embellishing tales of hunger. You youngsters are blissfully unaware, they'd remark, stirring the pot with the very spoon that once unearthed roots in that long, harsh winter of despair. In my time, stew was a rarity we seldom encountered. We had simmered anticipation, plain and unadorned. Even the little ones joined in the tale. In their playful world, they would feign desperation for turnips, engage in spirited debates over non-existent thistles, or dramatically fall to the ground, overcome by their imagined hunger. Some might argue it forged resilience, or a tale of hardship, a blend of both worlds. Yet hidden beneath the dramatic surface, a genuine intention thrived. Famine narratives served as warnings. They safeguarded the wisdom of survival, earned through trials and tribulations. Which weeds posed no threat, which mushrooms were undeniably deadly, and which lords were most inclined to pilfer your seed grain for the honor of their domain. These narratives wove together the fabric of community connections. When you endured hardships side by side, your laughter rang out even stronger, even if the humor revolved around flatulence, stale bread, and the legendary thistle pie made by Uncle Jeff. It appeared as if a transgression had occurred, and the flavor was reminiscent of retribution. Melodies began to weave their way into the tapestry, Melancholic ballads with memorable refrains about barren fields, avaricious landowners, and aspirations of creamy delights. In the days of yore, when the land was ruled by lords and the common folk toiled under the weight of their burdens, the peasants, though devoid of the means to capture their tales in writing, wove their stories through the spoken word. Thus, the echoes of the terrible famine lingered in the hearts and minds of all, a haunting reminder of their shared suffering that time could not erase. Or how amusing it is, when looking back, that Brother Thomas once attempted to milk a goose. As the next famine approached, a familiar cycle began anew. The people, with memories etched in their hearts, found themselves slightly more equipped to face the hardships, or at the very least, they learned to chuckle amidst the despair. For every humble soul who weathered the storm of famine by concocting dubious soup or foraging for moss as if it were a culinary delight, there were countless others who did not. Famine reached far beyond the mere emptiness of plates. It swept through villages, leaving them desolate. What ensued was a dark waltz of necessity, superstition, and the all-too-familiar medieval motif of a day that could only be described as the worst imaginable. As the first whispers of death emerged, subtle and soft, they soon crescendoed into relentless waves, leaving the survivors to grapple with an unsettling new reality. Where shall we hide all the bodies? The burial grounds filled up swiftly, as if the earth itself was eager to embrace the departed. Some parishes found themselves in a predicament, having exhausted their supply of consecrated land, and thus were compelled to think creatively. Gather round, for the tale of the infamous spoon is about to unfold. No, this is not a metaphor. In certain areas, it is said that grave diggers, lacking the strength for proper tools, resorted to using wooden spoons to carve out shallow pits. Rest in peace transformed into rest as best we can. Customs surrounding funerals have evolved. Grand ceremonies gave way to swift supplications, and if fortune smiled upon you, there was a chance that someone would recall your name. The village priest, weary from the weight of sorrow, found himself at the altar for the 17th time that week. Even he, a beacon of hope, began to feel the heaviness of the task, as if the spirit of the ceremonies had begun to fade. But not in the most literal sense. In a time long past, amidst the tapestry of medieval Europe, a tale unfolds. Only the somber toll of the death bell echoed through the silence. Garments, once simple, transformed into profound symbols. Families adorned themselves with black ribbons or wore ashes, not as a statement of style, but as a testament to what remained in their hearts. The period of public mourning was fleeting, not out of a lack of compassion, but rather because sorrow had to coexist with the pressing needs of hunger and the urgent task of sowing barley. Yet, there existed instances of grace. In the quiet corners of the world, makeshift memorials emerged, small wooden crosses, intricate carvings on stones, or perhaps a simple ring suspended from a branch, each telling a tale of remembrance. Whispers of stories filled the air, recounting acts of bravery, the sharing of last meals, and the poignant moment when one offered their final crust of bread. For in the absence of salvation, the power of memory remains. In their innocent way, the children engaged in a game of funeral, not from malice, but because they understood it as a thread woven into the fabric of existence. They would arrange dolls crafted from straw, staging solemn burials with acorns and sticks, weaving tales of farewell and remembrance. Unsettling? Perhaps. Healing? Absolutely. And as the famine faded into the past, those who endured bore the heavy burden of remembrance. Graves nurtured the grass, yet the names remained, echoing through time. In the midst of mud and hardship, the peasants wove tales not merely of survival, but also of those who had fallen by the wayside, ensuring that no soul was ever truly lost to the shadows of time. Enduring a famine was more than a mere struggle for sustenance. It transformed your very perception of trust. Trust in the natural world, in those who lived beside you, and particularly in the local lord who feasted on roast pheasant while you were left to chew on boiled rope. And as the hunger subsided, an unforeseen presence began to blossom in its stead. A feeling of bitterness lingers. Once, the peasants lived their lives in quiet submission, their legs too weary to rise against their fate. Yet, as time passed, they began to observe the curious ways of their overlords, how the lords always seemed to feast while their own bellies ached with hunger, and how the grain stores stood barren for the needy, yet overflowed with bounty when the taxman came calling. And so the murmurs took flight. We were deliberately left to hunger. My cousin caught a glimpse of the abbot, a curious sight indeed, as he was accompanied by a wheel of cheese. It has come to my ears that the Lord's canine dines in a manner far superior to our own. That final tale was likely rooted in truth. In certain lands, the grip of famine ignited the flames of rebellion. Though the peasants lacked swords, they wielded pitchforks and hoes, fueled by a fury that could only arise from enduring 3 straight meals of dried nettles. In the heart of the market squares, chaos erupted as tensions ignited into fervent riots. Granaries fell victim to raids. Once in a while, a noble would discover himself trapped within the confines of his own wine cellar, held captive by those who had long since abandoned the notion of divine right, resorting even to the theft of barley. Indeed, the majority of uprisings met with rapid and brutal suppression. Ah, the essence of revolts. They weave a tale of defiance and change. One cannot hope to escape the pursuit of knights while riding a humble donkey. Yet the fear lingered on. In a time of uncertainty, the lords turned their attention to fortifying their grain stores, pouring resources into stronger locks, towering defenses, and vigilant guards to protect their precious bounty. It's a sign of the times when a simple sack of oats requires the watchful eye of armed guardians. Certain rulers, those who possessed more wisdom than a thirst for power, chose an alternate path. They implemented grain regulation, established emergency granaries, and enforced market controls, not out of genuine concern, but rather because famished peasants tend to remain silent. Furious and united, the peasants rise up. The struggle for survival during famine even transformed the very fabric of law. In a time of dire need, a humble peasant, driven by desperation, could have faced the grim fate of losing a hand for the mere act of stealing a loaf of bread during the famine. In the end, perhaps redemption awaits them. In the end, all recalled that time when justice went hungry, just as mercy did. What strategies did medieval peasants employ to endure a year of famine? In the face of despair, with a spark of creativity, a touch of serendipity, and the bravery to confront a system that thrives on their yearning. And if you lend an ear, you may still catch the faint whispers of those tales, murmured around flickering campfires, inscribed upon the walls of churches, or hidden beneath layers of time and reverence. On a frigid December night in 1542, within the sturdy stone walls of Linlithgow Palace, a baby girl was born, destined to bear the heavy burden of a crown from her very first breath. Mary Stuart, who would come to be known as Mary, Queen of Scots, entered the world not amidst the commonplace lullabies of infancy. From the very beginning, her life unfolded amidst turmoil. Only 6 days prior, her father, King James V of Scotland, had succumbed to a severe illness following a military setback at Solway Moss. His final utterances were whispered with a heavy heart, steeped in sorrow. It arrived with a maiden, and it shall depart with a maiden. Foreseeing that the lineage of the Stuarts, which had commenced long ago with a woman as its heir, would similarly conclude with a female successor. Whether he genuinely spoke these words or not, they adhered to Mary's tale like an unshakable hex. At just 6 days old, Mary ascended to the throne of Scotland, a title that rendered her both a cherished gem and a figure of great danger. Her innocence. She was but a child, unaware of the weight of power, yet fate thrust her into the heart of a perilous political intrigue. In a land of fierce clans and divided loyalties, the Scottish nobility maneuvered for power, their ambitions clashing like swords. Meanwhile, King Henry VIII of England, ever the opportunist, watched with keen interest, ready to seize the moment. He set forth the rough wooing, a fierce endeavor designed to compel a union between the young Mary and his own son, Prince Edward. Scotland stood firm, and in that defiance, Mary's fate was woven into a tapestry of violence and treachery. A world where innocence is often cherished, her youth was steeped in the complexities of power and governance. Her cradle was surrounded not by soothing melodies, but by the tense murmurs of agreements, partnerships, and impending dangers. Though the regents governed in her name, their allegiance was frequently as fragile as a whisper in the wind. Each choice, from the place she would rest her head to the person she might one day vow to love, resonated with global significance. From her very beginnings, Mary embodied a duality of promise and peril. To the Scots, she embodied a beacon of unity, a true emblem of their quest for freedom. To the English, she appeared as a possible bride, or perhaps even a contender for the English throne, all due to her Tudor lineage. To the French, she was a delicate piece on the chessboard, to be safeguarded and cultivated for the promise of future bonds. Before she could even take her first steps or utter her first words, Mary Stuart was already draped in the mantle of a queen, poised as a bride and looming as a formidable threat. Her life unfolded not merely as a tale of birth and growth, but as the prologue to a grand political saga that would stretch across decades and culminate in sorrow. From the very beginning, Mary's guardians understood that Scotland was a perilous realm for a young queen. In a time of great upheaval, the English forces, led by the formidable Henry VIII, loomed ominously, intent on claiming her as their own, as they sought to forge an alliance through marriage to his son, Edward. Rather than yielding its young ruler, Scotland sought the support of its long-standing companion from across the sea, France. At the tender age of 5, Mary found herself whisked away, carefully wrapped and placed aboard a ship destined for the dazzling courts of Europe. The journey was fraught with danger, yet she reached the shores of France in 1548, a young girl bearing the burdens of 2 realms. In France, Mary discovered a realm that stood in stark contrast to the fierce conflicts of the Scottish clans. In a grand display, the French court shimmered with luxurious silks, sparkling jewels, and intricate ceremonies that captivated all who beheld them. Under the watchful eyes of King Henry II and his queen, Catherine de' Medici, she found herself embraced as a beloved guest and a significant player in the intricate dance of politics. Her presence embodied the timeless bond between France and Scotland, a connection deepened by her engagement to the Dauphin, Francis, the king's cherished yet fragile son. In stark contrast to the solitude that may have enveloped her in Scotland, Mary flourished amidst the vibrant tapestry of the French court. She received a prestigious education, sharing her learning experience with French princesses and the offspring of nobility, including the daughters of Catherine de' Medici herself. Guided by skilled mentors, she delved into the realms of languages, music, poetry, and the refined art of courtly manners. In the quiet corners of her world, she embraced the art of reading and writing in both French and Latin, allowing her innate brilliance to illuminate the pages before her. With an elegance that captivated all, Mary, tall for her age and adorned with auburn hair and striking features, quickly emerged as the shining gem of the Valois court. Yet, even within this seemingly enchanted childhood, her fate was never truly hers to command. Each lesson in the art of etiquette, every alliance forged through a graceful dance or a fleeting smile, wove together the tapestry of her destiny as queen, not merely of Scotland, but perhaps of France as well. To the French, she embodied their dreams of a future queen consort. To the Scots, she was a figure shrouded in distance, a sovereign whose presence lingered like a whisper in the wind. To Elizabeth Tudor, the daughter of Henry VIII and the rightful heir to the English throne, Mary emerged as a formidable challenge, a rival whose claim was deemed by many Catholics to be more legitimate than her own. For a fleeting moment, Mary found herself enveloped in a shimmering cocoon of warmth and light. She shared laughter with her companions, wove verses of poetry and strummed melodies, blissfully unaware of the ephemeral nature of tranquility. In the heart of the French court, she was nurtured not as a mere Scottish outsider, but as a cherished member of their realm, a queen in waiting, poised to grace the grand stage of Europe with her presence. As Mary entered her teenage years, the girl once sent away for her safety had transformed into one of Europe's most cherished princesses. With a keen intellect, graceful eloquence, and a height that set her apart from the women of her era, she captured attention in the French court, not only for her remarkable looks, but also for her dignified presence. The courtiers whispered among themselves, convinced that she was marked for extraordinary things, and for a fleeting moment it appeared as though fate had cast a benevolent glance in her direction. In the spring of 1558, a young girl named Mary, only 15 years of age, embarked on a remarkable journey as she wed Francis, the Dauphin of France. The union was marked by a celebration that showcased the utmost splendor France had to offer. Vivid scenes unfolded, chimes echoed, and celebrations lingered for an eternity. To the French, Mary had transcended the role of a mere honored guest. She was destined to be their future queen consort. For the Scots, this union symbolized a formidable alliance with the French, a shield against the looming threat of English hostility. To the newly crowned Queen Elizabeth of England, who had taken her place on the throne mere months prior, this was a perilous turn of events in the realm of politics. Mary's connection to the English crown, woven through her grandmother, Margaret Tudor, sister of Henry VIII, was undeniably robust. As the consort of the French heir, she found herself bolstered by the formidable strength of Catholic Europe. The union, however, was far from the enchanting tale that the spectacle had suggested. Francis, delicate and unwell, stood in stark contrast to the lively spirit of Mary. As she captivated the audience with her charm and self-assurance, he frequently appeared to be engulfed by the weight of his responsibilities. Yet Mary held steadfast, embodying patience and unwavering loyalty to him. She embraced her role with unwavering dedication, nurturing his delicate health and uplifting his reputation in moments of weakness. In the year of our Lord 1559, destiny smiled upon her, lifting her to even greater heights. In a twist of fate, King Henry II of France met his untimely end following a jousting mishap, leaving young Francis, just 15 years of age, to take on the weighty mantle of the throne. At the tender age of 16, Mary ascended to the role of Queen Consort of France. In a fleeting and radiant instant, she grasped a crown in either hand, a sovereign of Scotland by her lineage and a sovereign of France through her union. Europe stood captivated, a mix of wonder and trepidation in their hearts, yet the victory proved fleeting. Francis's health, a fragile thread, started to unravel swiftly. In the span of a single year, he met his untimely end at the tender age of 16. Casting Mary into the role of a widow before she had even celebrated her 18th birthday. The shimmering vision of reigning over France shattered in an instant, leaving Mary to confront a future shrouded in uncertainty. Before she even turned 18, Mary became a queen. Yet she was left without a kingdom to call her own. In France, her standing crumbled abruptly following the demise of Francis in 1560. Catherine de' Medici, a woman of great power and influence, showed little desire to maintain the young widow's presence in the intricate dance of French politics. The court that had once cherished Mary now grew distant, viewing her as a symbol of dreams unfulfilled. With few options before her, Mary steeled herself for the journey back to Scotland, a place she had departed in her youth and now felt like a distant memory. Her return in 1561 stirred a tapestry of emotions, weaving together joy and uncertainty. The Scots greeted their queen with a mix of intrigue and skepticism, seeing her as an outsider, a woman raised in the opulence of the French court, steeped In Catholic customs in a land that had recently turned towards Protestant reform, her entrance into Edinburgh was nothing short of theatrical. The streets thrummed with the energy of curious onlookers as musicians filled the air with their melodies and bonfires flickered, casting a warm glow over the night. Yet beneath the grand display lingered a sense of discomfort. At the tender age of 19, Mary radiated youth and beauty, yet she found herself navigating a world torn apart by the chasms of faith and the fierce contests of nobility. John Knox, the passionate preacher of the Reformation, raised his voice in fervent opposition to her Catholic beliefs, proclaiming that a woman, especially one of papist allegiance, had no rightful claim to the throne. Mary, with her usual poise and sharp wit, faced him head-on, unyielding in her stance. She promised her people that she would not impose Catholicism upon them, a wise approach that garnered her measured backing. Yet the challenge before her was daunting. She faced the challenge of earning the trust of a wary nobility, maneuvering through the surging wave of Protestantism, and safeguarding her throne from English meddling. With keen eyes, Elizabeth I of England observed every step Mary took. To Elizabeth, Mary was not merely a queen next door. She was a figure woven into the very fabric of her own tale. She emerged as a formidable contender, her rightful claim fervently supported by Catholics throughout Europe. In the enchanting land of Scotland, Mary embarked on her quest to govern with a spirit of understanding and the art of negotiation. She gathered around her a circle of trusted advisors, diligently sought to stabilize the nation's finances, and endeavored to mend the rifts between the clashing factions that loomed like storm clouds, threatening to tear the country asunder. Yet, beneath the surface, a current of unease flowed, as each choice she faced, be it her beliefs or her bonds, was examined for any hint of frailty. Mary had come back to reclaim her rightful throne as Scotland's ruler, yet the realm she stepped into was steeped in turmoil, distrust, and wavering allegiance. The scene was poised for the tumultuous times that would shape her legacy. In her role as queen, Mary understood that the act of marrying transcended mere personal desire. It was a strategic maneuver in the grand tapestry of politics. Each suitor embodied a union, a wager, and a looming danger. For years, she stood firm against the tide, thoughtfully considering each path before her. In the year of our Lord 1565, she embarked on a daring journey, one that would lead to unforeseen and calamitous consequences. In a tale of love and ambition, she became the bride of Henry Stuart, Lord Darnley. Darnley stood tall and handsome, sharing a lineage with Mary from the illustrious Tudor line, a connection that fortified her claim to the English throne. On the surface, the match appeared to be a perfect fit. Their union intertwined two formidable branches of the Stuart family, giving rise to heirs destined to unite both Scotland and England under the banner of Catholic legitimacy. Mary found herself enchanted from the very beginning, drawn in by his charisma and the energy of his youth. Yet the crowd remained skeptical. Nobles fretted over Darnley's haughty demeanor, as Elizabeth I simmered with concern at the looming danger of their united claim. In the beginning, the union filled Mary with happiness and a revitalized sense of direction. Yet the facade quickly began to falter. Darnley unveiled his true nature, marked by vanity, immaturity, and an insatiable ambition. He envisioned himself, crowned as the king in his own right, not just as a consort, and harbored a deep-seated resentment towards Mary's dominion. His boisterous rants and wild antics drove a wedge between him and the nobles, who soon found themselves filled with disdain for him. Even Mary, once a fervent champion of his cause, found her faith wavering. The moment of reckoning arrived with the notorious assassination of David Rizzio, the trusted private secretary and confidant of Mary Darnley. Engulfed in a tempest of jealousy and spurred on by discontented lords, was convinced that Rizzio had forged an unsettling bond with his wife. In the month of March, in the year 1566, as the evening meal unfolded within the grand halls of Holyrood Palace, a band of armed conspirators stormed into the Queen's chamber. Before the expectant Mary, they seized Rizzio and plunged their blades into him over 50 times. The Queen, gripped by fear and shame, found herself unable to take action. Even in the face of Darnley's betrayal, Mary maintained her poise and grace. She gave birth to a son, James, in June 1566, a child destined to inherit both the Scottish and English thrones. Yet the bond between her and Darnley lay shattered, irreparably fractured. His standing dwindled, and one by one, even those who once stood by his side turned away. In the year 1567, a chilling tale unfolded as Darnley was discovered lifeless under enigmatic circumstances. Strangled following a perplexing explosion at Kirklefield, the shadow of suspicion loomed heavily over Mary. Whether she took part in the unfolding drama remains a topic of contention, yet the shadow of scandal would linger in her story for all time. What started as a union filled with hope transformed into a tale of bloodshed, treachery, and a looming darkness that cast a pall over her rule. Scotland was plunged into turmoil by the untimely demise of Lord Darnley. Though many despised him, the violent and suspicious circumstances of his murder demanded justice. Rather than shedding light, the inquiry only plunged the scandal into darker depths. Rumors began to circulate swiftly, hinting that James Hepburn, the Earl of Bothwell and a trusted confidant of Mary, was entangled in the unfolding drama, and when Mary found herself entwined with Bothwell, whispers transformed into bold allegations. Bothwell embodied all that Darnley lacked: fearless, unyielding, and authoritative. He had long been a formidable presence in Scottish politics, and unlike the hesitant nobles who faltered in their allegiance, he appeared steadfast in his devotion to Mary. To some, he was the steadfast guardian she had longed for. To some, he was a cunning figure, always ready to seize the moment. In the fateful month of April in the year 1567, Bothwell found himself facing trial for the murder of Darnley. Yet, the events unfolded like a grand spectacle of absurdity. In a whirlwind of events, the trial unfolded with haste. Witnesses found themselves under pressure, and in the end, Bothwell emerged victorious. Acquitted of all charges, in a matter of weeks, he astonished the entire kingdom by taking Mary as his bride. The question of whether she embarked on her journey of her own accord or under duress lingers as one of the most captivating enigmas of the past. Whispers of intrigue tell of Bothwell's daring act of abduction, compelling the union against her will. Some believe that Mary, feeling alone and yearning for fortitude, made her choice driven by her own determination. In any case, the union proved disastrous for her standing in society. In the shadow of Darnley's demise, the nobles, filled with suspicion towards Mary, ignited a rebellion. For them, her union with the man long believed to be behind Darnley's murder served as undeniable evidence of her involvement. The scandal provided her adversaries with everything they required. In a matter of months, the flames of civil war ignited. At Carberry Hill, Mary stood resolute against the lords who sought her surrender, their demands echoing through the air like a thunderous storm. Abandoned by numerous allies, she capitulated, as Bothwell sought refuge in distant lands. Mary's descent from favor was rapid and merciless. The young queen, once adored by the realms of France and Scotland, now found herself cast in the shadows, labeled a scandalous widow who had become a daring bride. In the gaze of her foes, she had bartered her dignity for longing, her crown for shame. Her union with Bothwell, whether forged from passion, trepidation, or cunning, marked a pivotal moment in her rule. The decision that plunged Scotland into turmoil and set her on an irreversible journey. She found herself confined within the cold walls of Loch Leven Castle, her regal crown taken from her brow. As the echoes of a once vibrant life faded, Mary found herself gazing upon the fragile figure of her infant son, James, now crowned King of Scotland. In that moment, she was left to ponder the shattered remnants of her existence. Mary's confinement within the walls of Loch Leven Castle appeared to determine her destiny. In the year 1567, she found herself compelled to step down from her throne, entrusting the crown to her young son, James, while her half-brother, the Earl of Moray, took the reins as regent. Deprived of her strength and forsaken by the very nobles who had pledged their allegiance, Mary seemed to be at the end of her journey. Yet she was never one to yield without a fight. In the month of May in the year 1568, aided by steadfast allies, she donned a disguise and embarked on a bold flight from the castle, weaving a tale of daring escape. The Queen had regained her freedom, poised to gather her loyal supporters once more. For a fleeting instant, luck swayed to her advantage. With fervent hearts, her loyal supporters encircled her, and she summoned an army to seize back her rightful throne. Yet, at the Battle of Langside, her troops faced a crushing defeat. Weary and filled with a sense of urgency, Mary found herself at a crossroads, leading her to a pivotal choice. Rather than escaping to France, where she had once held the title of Queen Consort, she chose to cross into England, seeking sanctuary with her cousin, Elizabeth I. This decision would seal her fate. Elizabeth stood at the crossroads of an impossible dilemma. On one side, Mary was her kin, a queen in her own right, and a woman who had faced her share of trials. In contrast, Mary held a deep-rooted connection to her Catholic faith and possessed a compelling hereditary claim to the English throne. A claim that garnered greater legitimacy in the eyes of many across Europe compared to Elizabeth's. To offer refuge to Mary was to beckon insurrection. To turn her away was to forsake the bonds of noble blood. Ultimately, Elizabeth opted for prudence. Mary found herself in protective custody, yet it soon became evident that this so-called protection was nothing more than a gilded cage of house arrest. She would forever be bound, never to taste freedom again. Moved from one magnificent estate to the next, she existed under a vigilant gaze, her every step confined, her correspondence scrutinized. In the beginning, Mary held tightly to her hope. She reached out to the rulers of Europe, sought the support of her Catholic allies, and devised cunning plans to reclaim her rightful throne. She envisioned a moment when Elizabeth would stand before her, sovereign to sovereign, bestowing the justice she sought. Yet that gathering remained elusive. Instead, Mary found herself ensnared in the web of politics, a living embodiment of danger that Elizabeth could not afford to set free. And so unfolded the tale of Mary's 19 years spent in captivity within the confines of England. Once a luminous young queen adorned with 2 crowns, she now stood as a captive ensnared in the tumult of Europe's religious and dynastic conflicts. Some gazed upon her with admiration, others with disdain, yet it was Elizabeth who felt the deepest trepidation in her presence. Mary's time in England felt more like a tale of confinement than a mere prison sentence. She found herself within the walls of grand houses and majestic castles, Sheffield, Tuckbury, Chartley, each a sanctuary of sorts, yet still they were gilded cages, far removed from the freedom she longed for. With servants ever at her side, she engaged in embroidery, pursued the thrill of the hunt, and penned letters, yet each movement she made was under watchful eyes. Though her freedom had slipped away, her dignity remained intact and her ambition burned brighter than ever. In the hearts of Catholic Europe, Mary shone brightly as a symbol of hope. In a time of great uncertainty, Elizabeth I emerged as a Protestant queen, her claim to the throne often shrouded in doubt and scrutiny from those around her. Mary, on the other hand, was a Catholic bearing the noble lineage of the Tudors. For the Pope, Spain, and France, Mary emerged as a beacon of hope, a figure around whom the faithful could unite in the quest to revive Catholicism in England. This meant that throughout her life, whispers of intrigue would hover around her like shadows in the night. Initially, Elizabeth bore her cousin's presence with a sense of reluctant patience, clinging to the hope that time might eventually diminish the shadow of her threat. Yet tales continued to emerge. In the year 1571, a daring scheme unfolded, one that sought to unseat Elizabeth and elevate Mary to the throne, all with the support of Spain. In the year 1583, the Throckmorton plot wove her name into the fabric of Catholic uprisings. With each passing moment, The English crown's suspicions deepened. Yet Elizabeth found herself reluctant to cast judgment upon a fellow queen without hesitation. Mary, in the midst of her turmoil, found herself consumed by a restless urgency and a deepening sense of desperation. Isolated from the world of power, she resorted to clandestine communication, crafting coded letters that found their way into beer barrels and were cleverly concealed within fabric. She envisioned herself not as a captive, but as a rightful ruler, wronged by destiny and her own kin. In her mind's eye, she envisioned a world unbound, where the shackles of constraint melted away, of reclaiming her rightful place upon the throne in Scotland, or perhaps even taking the throne of England in Elizabeth's stead. It was during the tumultuous events of 1586 that the Babington plot emerged as a pivotal moment. In a tale woven with intrigue, we find ourselves drawn to the figure of Anthony Babington, a spirited young nobleman of the Catholic faith. His daring conspiracy sought to bring about the downfall of Elizabeth, with the ultimate goal of placing Mary upon the throne. Little did Mary know that Elizabeth's cunning spymaster, Sir Francis Walsingham, had already laid his hands on the intercepted letters. Her hidden messages, once cloaked in mystery but now unveiled, appeared to convey her endorsement of the scheme. Whether she wholeheartedly embraced the act against Elizabeth or simply yearned for liberation is a matter of ongoing discussion, yet to her adversaries, the proof was undeniably incriminating. For nearly 2 decades, Elizabeth had steadfastly turned away the whispers urging her to rid herself of her cousin. At this moment, the winds of change had begun to blow. The Parliament, with unwavering resolve, clamored for the execution of Mary, convinced that as long as she drew breath, she would pose an ever-present threat. Once a regal figure commanding the courts of France and Scotland, the Queen now found herself a mere pawn, teetering on the brink of checkmate. In the crisp autumn of 1586, the stage was set at Fotheringhay Castle for the trial of Mary, Queen of Scots. After 19 long years of confinement, the daughter of Scotland stood at the precipice of her ultimate fate. She faced the grave accusation of treason, entangled in the web of the Babington plot, where whispers of conspiracy to assassinate Elizabeth and claim the English throne swirled around her. The trial unfolded like a grand performance, captivating the audience more than delivering true justice. In a tale of intrigue and loyalty, Mary, a queen from distant lands, passionately contended that she could not be deemed guilty of treason against a ruler to whom she had never pledged her fealty. Yet the court showed no signs of compassion. The intercepted letters revealed a troubling truth, and Elizabeth's ministers seized the moment to strengthen their position. With unwavering bravery, Mary stood her ground. Though worn by the trials of time, she called forth the grace of her royal lineage. She called upon her accusers to remember that she was a sovereign, not merely a subject, and that her destiny had been forged as much by the demands of politics as by her own aspirations. Gaze into your hearts and recall that the stage of the entire world stretches far beyond the borders of England, she proclaimed, reaching out not only to the judges present, but to the very essence of history. The outcome was always clear. Mary faced the verdict of guilt and was condemned to the ultimate fate of death. Elizabeth paused, caught in the delicate balance of loyalty and duty, knowing that to execute a queen would carve a perilous path forward. What if her own subjects interpreted it as a call to rebel against her? To sustain Mary's life was to weave a tapestry of perpetual schemes and lurking peril. At long last, with a heavy heart, Elizabeth affixed her signature to the death warrant. On the fateful day of February 8, 1587, Mary made her way to the execution chamber at Fotheringhay. Clad in black, she embodied the essence of royalty, exuding an air of calm and grace. Underneath her gown, a deep crimson hue lay hidden, reminiscent of sacrifice and valor. Kneeling before the block, she whispered her hopes for her son, James, and found it in her heart to forgive those who stood ready to end her life. With a hesitant swing, the first axe stroke fell awkwardly, but the second came with a newfound determination. It was the third that sealed the fate of Mary, Queen of Scots, bringing her story to a tragic close. at the age of 44. Her untimely demise reverberated across Europe, leaving a profound impact on all who heard the news. To some, she stood as a symbol of unwavering faith, while to others she served as a lesson in the perils of conviction. In the tapestry of history, her son, James VI of Scotland, was destined to ascend to Elizabeth's throne as James I of England, weaving together the crowns she had longed to unite. Mary's life unfolded like a rich tapestry, intricately woven with threads of love, betrayal, and ambition. From the moment she donned the crown as a mere child, her life unfolded like a dramatic tale filled with imprisonment for countless years and a fateful end as a traitor. Her story resonates through time, marking her as one of history's most poignant and enthralling queens. During the Middle Ages, the Scottish diet was shaped more by necessity than by preference, and none of the foods captured that truth quite like the humble oat. Resilient and steadfast, oats emerged as the grain that flourished in places where wheat and barley frequently stumbled. In the land of Scotland, where the winds blow cold and the summers are but fleeting whispers, the skies often weep, painting a picture far removed from the golden wheat fields that grace England and France. In a world where many crops faltered, it was the humble oat that thrived, drawing strength from the harshest of soils, a testament to resilience and tenacity. This unwavering strength became the foundation of Scottish nourishment. In every home, whether it belonged to humble crofters or the more affluent minor lairds, oats served as the cornerstone of their daily sustenance, quite literally. Oats were transformed into meal on humble quernstones, a cherished tradition passed down from mother to daughter, serving as a cornerstone of the household. Once ground, the meal could be preserved for months, holding its worth in the coldest depths of winter, just as it did in the warmest days of summer. Families transformed it into a hearty porridge, shaped it into oat cakes, or simmered it into broths that extended their scant provisions of meat and vegetables. In the harshest of times, it was the humble oat that sustained the spirit and resilience of the Scots, allowing them to endure and thrive against all odds. The oat's role may not have sparkled with grandeur, yet it held an essential place in the tale. In a realm where the privileges of the hunt were tightly controlled and the treasures of the outside world were few and far between, oats embraced equality, the sustenance of all, from the humble shepherds tending their flocks on the rugged hills to the serene monks dwelling in their tranquil monasteries. In the tapestry of life, they represented resilience, consumed simply in times of struggle, yet transformed into a delightful feast with honey, butter, or herbs when fortune smiled upon them. Oats offered more than just sustenance. They brought a comforting sense of stability in a world filled with unpredictability. Wanderers traversing the highlands bore with them sacks of oat cakes, hard and dry yet satisfying, nestled within their packs for the arduous journeys ahead. In the heart of the battlefield, soldiers relied on these humble creations, aware that a simple bannock crafted from oatmeal and water could be their lifeline when provisions dwindled. The grain wove itself into the very fabric of identity, signifying the Scots as resilient and resourceful souls, molded by the land and its challenges. To the medieval Scot, oats were more than mere sustenance. They were woven into the very fabric of life. They formed the bedrock of existence, a constant reminder that true strength resided not in opulence, but in perseverance. In the absence of oats, the world would lack the comforting embrace of bread, the warm nourishment of porridge, and the hearty essence of broth. In every way, this modest grain stood as the very foundation of existence. If porridge was the daily fuel of medieval Scotland, bannocks were its very essence. These flat, round oatcakes were as familiar as the warmth of the hearth, crafted on griddles called girdles or even directly upon heated stones nestled beside the flickering fire. In the quiet of the kitchen, the humble ingredients came together: oatmeal, water, and occasionally a whisper of salt. From this unassuming blend emerged one of the most cherished and adaptable dishes of the Middle Ages. The charm of the bannock lay in its remarkable versatility. In a humble crofter's kitchen, the bannock emerges as a simple creation of oats and water, lovingly baked to offer nourishment after the toil of a long day in the fields. In contrast, a more affluent household might elevate their fare with the addition of butter, milk, or eggs, turning it into a dish that is softer, richer, and more satisfying. When the opportunity arose, herbs, onions, or even dried fruits found their way into the bannock, transforming it from a simple meal into a delightful indulgence. Cooking unfolded with simplicity, yet it wove a rich tapestry of tradition. The women of the household, the heart of daily preparations, would skillfully spread the dough thin and lay it upon a hot girdle, gracefully suspended over the flickering flames of the open hearth. The aroma of toasted oats wafted through the home, intertwining with the scent of wood smoke. Creating a vivid tapestry of family life, fresh bannocks were a delight to savor, yet their ability to endure, particularly when dried, rendered them a wise choice for those embarking on journeys. Adventurers and warriors alike stowed them away in their packs, aware that these resilient oat cakes could endure the harshest of weathers and the toughest of trials. Bannocks held a significance beyond mere sustenance. They were emblematic of time and tradition, steeped in ceremonial importance. For the festivals and seasonal rituals, unique bannocks were crafted. The Beltane bannocks heralding the arrival of summer, the Lammas bannock celebrating the harvest, and the Yule bannocks bringing warmth during the winter festivities. In these moments, a humble oatcake transformed into something greater, embodying the essence of community, the thread of continuity, and the spirit of survival through the changing seasons. The true charm of the bannock lay not in its opulence, but in its steadfastness. It was satisfying, portable, and infinitely versatile to fit any situation. It nourished those toiling in the fields, guided shepherds roaming the hills, supported monks in their sacred retreats, and fortified warriors readying for the fray. While outsiders may have scoffed at the Scottish fondness for oats, for those who called the heather and rain their home, bannock stood as a testament to their strength, simple, nourishing fare that was distinctly theirs. While the bannock held its steadfast place by the hearth, porridge pulsed as the very essence of the medieval Scottish diet. With each passing day and every bubbling pot, the porridge became the heart of family life, a warm and comforting presence that brought everyone together. Crafted from the simplest of ingredients, oatmeal, water, and occasionally a hint of milk, this dish stood as a testament to the ordinary yet vital nature of sustenance. In a realm where survival hinged on the ability to transform the minimal into the meaningful, it embodied the essence of nourishment. The act of preparation unfolded with an elegance that felt both straightforward and steeped in tradition. Above the crackling fire, a sturdy iron pot swayed gently, while a wooden stick, affectionately called a spurtle, danced through the bubbling liquid, coaxing the oatmeal into a warm embrace. The stirring danced to a timeless rhythm, a legacy woven through generations, ensuring the porridge remained smooth and free of clumps. Time flowed gently, unhurried and serene. Porridge called for a gentle touch, as the rhythmic stirring crafted a consistency that was both satisfying to the belly and easy to consume swiftly before the day's labor in the fields began. For countless souls, porridge graced the table as breakfast, dinner, and on occasion even supper. In households facing financial struggles, a single pot becomes a vessel of endurance, its contents lovingly reheated throughout the day, with water or broth added to ensure it sustains the family's needs. In the grander abodes or sacred halls, porridge could be transformed with the addition of milk, honey, or butter, elevating this simple fare into a delightful comfort dish. Leftover porridge found its way into a drawer or tray, where it cooled into a solid mass, ready to be sliced into portions. Delightful porridge cakes, perfect for frying or savoring cold the following day. Porridge, in its humble essence, transcended mere sustenance. It was a unifying force for all. It fed the humble and the mighty, the devout and the brave, uniting all walks of life with the warmth of a shared, steaming bowl. In the harshest of times, it became the sole sustenance, nurturing entire families through the relentless winters when nothing else could be unearthed. For little ones, it was frequently their inaugural encounter with solid nourishment. For the aged, their final solace. To those who truly understood, Porridge was more than just a dish. It was a reflection of identity. English travelers scoffed at the Scots for their diet of nothing but oats, yet the Scots embraced this with pride, wearing it as a badge of honor. In a world where many faced hunger, they thrived, sustained by the steadfastness of oats and the humble comfort of porridge. Every spoonful revealed that true strength arises not from lavishness, but from unwavering determination. Porridge transcended mere sustenance. In a vibrant blend, survival, community, and culture danced together, creating a rich tapestry in a single pot. Each dawn in the heart of medieval Scotland, as the spurtle danced through the porridge, the essence of life was reborn. If porridge set the daily rhythm, broth danced in as the melody, adding a delightful variety to the Scottish table. In the Middle Ages, broth was not merely a dish. It was a tale simmering in a pot. It was a clever dance of creativity, taking the simplest of ingredients and weaving them into a tapestry of flavor, turning scraps and modest vegetables into a hearty, comforting meal that nourished both body and soul. At its core lay oatmeal once more, not as the main attraction, but as the subtle binder that transformed a delicate broth into a satisfying feast. At the heart of many broths lay the humble kale, leeks, onions, or any greens that could be nurtured in modest gardens or gathered from the wilds nearby. In this concoction, one might find the savory essence of salted meats when they were at hand, a strip of bacon, a morsel of ham bone or chunks of salted herring, each adding their unique flavor to the tale of the dish. Occasionally, venison found its way into the pot, a delight more often enjoyed by those fortunate enough to possess hunting rights. For the humble folk, meat was a treasure, a rarity that graced their tables only on special feast days or through the art of trade. In their world, the broth came alive with an array of vegetables, oats and fragrant herbs such as parsley and thyme, occasionally revealing a delightful surprise of marrow or fat to enhance its flavor. Gathering around to create broth was a shared experience, a moment where hands joined in harmony. A great cauldron swung above the crackling fire, and into its depths was cast all that could be spared. Families gathered around, sharing from the same pot, dipping ladles or pieces of bannock into the bubbling broth with warmth and camaraderie. The broth served not just to satisfy hunger, but also to provide a clever solution. It could gently bubble away for hours, perhaps even days, with vibrant, fresh ingredients stirred in whenever the opportunity arose. This enduring, ever-simmering pot of nourishment held great significance during the biting winters, when provisions needed to be extended to their utmost boundaries. In the hearts and minds of medieval Scots, broth held a significance that transcended mere nourishment, embodying a remedy steeped in tradition and belief. A steaming, robust brew was believed to fortify the frail, rejuvenate the ailing, and bring comfort to those weary souls returning from the toil of the fields. In the quiet halls of infirmaries, monks offered it to those in need, while devoted mothers turned to it as a source of strength for their ailing children. In a world where healing was basic and the chill of winter bit deep, a simple pot of broth served as both solace and remedy. Though humble, the broth embraced the whims of fate. For the esteemed, it may be adorned with the essence of game, seasoned with exotic pepper, or lavishly enhanced with rich butter. For the humble folk, their fare was frequently limited to kale, oats, and a touch of salted water. In every iteration, it revealed the same essence. In Scotland, the art of survival hinged on skillfully harnessing the abundant gifts of the land and sea. Within the dimly lit halls and humble cottages, the warmth of broth-filled bellies united families, serving as a gentle reminder that life could flourish with nothing more than patience, oats, and the comforting glow of a simmering fire. As the comforting warmth of oats, bread, and broth enveloped the hearth, the sea, with its vast and mysterious depths, offered Scotland yet another vital lifeline: fish. In the heart of the Middle Ages, salted herring emerged as a vital staple, nourishing villages, monasteries, and even the valiant armies of the time. With stretches of untamed coastline and a myriad of lochs and rivers, the waters teemed with fish. Yet it was the art of preservation, the salting, smoking, and drying, that transformed herring into the very foundation of Scotland's trade and sustenance. When the opportunity arose, fresh herring graced the table, either kissed by the flames of an open fire or tenderly simmered in a savory broth. Yet the majority of the bounty was preserved, salted, and carefully packed into barrels, awaiting the leaner months ahead. This straightforward method of preservation allowed fish to journey deep into the land, reaching the highland crofters who would otherwise be cut off from the bounty of the sea. For countless souls, salted herring stood as the steadfast beacon of protein, a humble yet dependable sustenance within their reach. The church's influence wove itself into the fabric of its popularity. In a time when the faithful adhered to strict fasting rules that prohibited meat on Fridays, during Lent and on other sacred days, fish emerged as the clear alternative. Herring, abundant and affordable, seamlessly filled this spiritual void. In the heart of the monasteries, it was savored in abundance, frequently accompanied by hearty oats or a nourishing kale broth to enrich the meal. In the humble abodes of the peasants, one could often find salted herring gracing the table, either dipped into porridge or accompanied by bannocks, particularly during the cold winter months. The art of fishing wove Scotland into the intricate tapestry of a broader medieval economy. In the heart of the North Sea, a vibrant tapestry of trade unfolded, where Scottish ports thrummed with the lively exchanges of merchants. Salted herring flowed in, while wine, cloth, and exotic spices from distant lands found their way into eager hands. Herring barrels transformed into treasures, nourishing local communities and fueling the wheels of global trade. Yet for everyday families, the significance of herring was rooted in practicality. It was the essence of endurance, a vivid, briny counterpoint to the monotony of porridge and bread. It brought a delightful array to meals that threatened to become dull, and it provided the fortitude for those toiling in the fields or braving the sea, ensuring they had the protein to persevere through long, demanding days. Young ones spent their days savoring the taste of salted fish. Adventurers transported it, carefully swathed in fabric. Brave soldiers strode forth, carrying it as an essential part of their provisions. In essence, herring was not merely a treat, but a vital sustenance, the ocean's steadfast offering to a terrain where the earth was reluctant to yield. In the tapestry of the medieval Scottish diet, it stood proudly alongside oats, weaving together the essential threads of sustenance. Harvested from the soil, caught from the depths, these elements weave together the essence of a community molded by the embrace of earth and ocean. In the grand tapestry of the Scottish diet, oats served as the sturdy backbone, while herring provided the essential protein. Yet it was kale that emerged as the vibrant green muscle, weaving everything together in a harmonious blend. In the Middle Ages, kale emerged not merely as a vegetable, but as a vital pillar of existence. In the harsh embrace of winter, where many crops faltered and withered, kale stood resilient and proud, a steadfast beacon of sustenance in a landscape that tested the limits of endurance. In every croft and cottage, there thrived a kale patch, lovingly safeguarded by humble stone walls, standing guard against the curious creatures of the land. In the heart of Scotland, these kale yards grew to embody the essence of life itself, transforming the very word kale into a symbol of nourishment for all. Kale possessed a remarkable versatility and, most importantly, an unwavering dependability. It could be gathered throughout the year, even in the heart of winter, when many other plants faded away. Families gathered around, their hands deftly cutting the dark leaves, tossing them into bubbling pots of broth. The rich mixture thickened with oats, while the warm bannocks served as a humble side, completing the meal with a touch of simplicity. It wasn't a refined meal, but it was packed with nutrients, vitamins, and iron that sustained the peasants through the grueling winters of relentless toil. The way kale was prepared danced to the rhythm of what other ingredients were at hand. In humble abodes, it was frequently simmered with naught but water and oatmeal, resulting in a delicate yet nourishing kale broth. In moments when meat or bones were a luxury, the leaves would soak up the essence, evolving into a dish that was rich and satisfying. While the more affluent might adorn their kale with rich butter or cream, for the majority, the essence lay in simplicity. The purpose of the green leaf was to nourish, not to dazzle the onlookers. Kale also bore significant cultural significance. The kale yard stood as more than a mere garden. It was the very soul of the home, a steadfast source that guaranteed sustenance and life itself. The term kale yard literature emerged in Scotland, capturing the essence of cozy rural existence, reflecting the profound connection between kale and the fabric of identity. In the days of yore, it stood as a testament to resilience, the harvest that thrived against all odds, the verdant lifeline that sustained souls when oats faltered. Young ones thrived on the warmth of kale broth, while the wise and aged turned to it as their strength waned and teeth faltered, and the laborers eagerly consumed it before venturing into the fields. Much like oats, kale faced ridicule from those who saw only its simplicity. Yet for the Scots, it stood as the unsung champion of their culinary tradition. Alongside porridge and salted herring, it formed the sacred trio of survival fare, a testament that nourishment arose not from luxury, but from unwavering strength. In the lives of many medieval Scots, meat stood as a rare treasure, a luxury rather than a common fare. Each day, nourishment flowed from the humble trio of oats, kale, and broth. In the midst of simple fare, the salted herring and the rare egg offered a touch of sustenance. Yet when meat graced the table, it brought with it an air of honor and festivity. Among all meats, venison held a unique allure. It was the sustenance of nobility, the delight of hunters, and the centerpiece of grand celebrations, cherished, sought after, and emblematic of authority. Venison was a rare treasure, not easily accessible to all. In the enchanting land of Scotland, much like the rest of medieval Europe, the art of hunting was a privilege reserved for the elite. The vast forests and majestic deer parks were the domain of nobles, and for the common folk, the consequences of poaching were dire, steeped in the shadows of harsh punishment. For the humble peasants, the opportunity to savor venison was a rare delight, perhaps gifted during a grand feast hosted by a laird or when morsels found their way down from the lavish tables of the nobility. For many, the nearest encounter with deer was the haunting sound of hunting horns reverberating through the glens. For the noble class, venison stood as a symbol of their elevated status. In the grand tapestry of the hunt, great gatherings unfolded, where skilled hounds and archers danced in a thrilling display, bringing forth the majestic stags and graceful does. The hunt was a moment of triumph. The spoils of the chase honored in feasts where the roasted venison reigned supreme. Infused with the exotic flavors of imported pepper, cloves and cinnamon, treasures acquired through trade, venison was crafted into sumptuous pies, roasts and stews, standing in stark contrast to the humble oat and kale dishes of the peasant class. Yet even within the circles of the affluent, venison transcended mere luxury. The tale danced to the cadence of the seasons. As the leaves turned and the air grew crisp, the hunts of autumn offered more than just a feast for the day. They gifted the promise of sustenance through the cold months ahead, with carcasses carefully salted or smoked, preserving the bounty of the season. In this manner, venison found its way into the storied larders of castles and abbeys, providing sustenance during the bleak months when fresh provisions were but a distant memory. The rich significance of venison echoed throughout the culture of that era. In the realm of nature, deer emerged as symbols of grace and agility, their chase resonating with the virtues of courage and mastery. To savor venison was to embrace a certain grandeur, a reminder of the divide between those who wielded the bow and those who merely envisioned the chase. In the realm of medieval Scotland, venison was a rare delight, far from the everyday fare. It was a moment of exquisite flavor, a brief brush with opulence in a life otherwise defined by modesty. As it made its appearance on the table, be it in a grand lord's hall or finding its way to a modest hearth, it served as a poignant reminder to all who partook of the stark chasm that exists between abundance and scarcity, between privilege and the struggle for existence. In medieval Scotland, the essence of food transcended mere survival. It wove itself into the very fabric of faith. The rhythms of the church guided the timing, nature, and manner of people's meals. In a world where the Catholic calendar wove its influence into the very fabric of daily existence, the rhythm of fasting and feast days crafted a dance between restraint and revelry, a journey through both want and jubilation. The practice of fasting was rigorous and often undertaken. On Fridays, during the solemn season of Lent, and on various sacred days scattered throughout the year, the consumption of meat was strictly prohibited. For the typical Scot, this was more of a tale than a trial. For peasants, meat was a luxury seldom enjoyed, even on the most ordinary of days. Yet as the fasting period unfolded, the choices became even more limited. In the realm of sustenance, fish, particularly the salted herring, emerged as the quintessential alternative, accompanied by humble oats, vibrant kale, and a comforting broth. In the realm of monasteries and churches, rules were upheld with unwavering diligence, compelling even the nobility to adhere to them. Yet the more affluent households, with their clever ingenuity, discovered delightful methods to enhance their fasting meals, employing exotic spices and sumptuous sauces to elevate the experience. Yet, the feast days transformed everything completely. In the vibrant tapestry of religious festivals such as Easter, Christmas, and local saints' days, a grand spectacle unfolded. Nobles, in their opulent halls, hosted sumptuous banquets where the rich aromas of roasted venison, beef, mutton, and pork filled the air, accompanied by flowing flagons of ale and wine, creating a feast that celebrated both faith and abundance. With the sound of minstrels filling the air, the flickering torches cast a warm glow, and the platters brimmed with an abundance of delights. For the humble folk, feast days emerged as a cherished break from the drudgery of daily life, presenting a time for shared meals where additional bannocks were crafted, broth enriched with an abundance of meat, and ale poured with generous abandon. These celebrations offered not only sustenance but also a spark of joy, a gentle reminder that existence transcended mere labor and survival. In even the coziest of homes, the arrival of feast days was celebrated with foods rich in meaning. For the celebrations of Beltane and Lammas, special bannocks or oatcakes were lovingly baked, while the Yule season might bring forth a hearty broth, enriched with the precious few morsels of meat that could be spared. These traditions wove a tapestry of connection for everyday individuals, allowing them to partake in the sacred rhythm of the calendar, intertwining their meals with the ebb and flow of time and the changing seasons. The interplay of fasting and feasting wove a rich tapestry of social hierarchy. In grand halls, nobles showcased their riches through lavish feasts, while in humble abodes, peasants rejoiced with the simple yet heartfelt offerings they could gather. In harmony, they embraced the same cadence, forgoing indulgence side by side, celebrating their bond, and weaving together sustenance and spirituality, transforming the simplest act of eating into a profound experience. In the heart of medieval Scotland, the humble oats and the catch of the day sustained life, yet it was the grand feast days and solemn fasts that imbued food with profound spiritual and cultural significance. The table served as more than just a source of sustenance. It embodied a tapestry of commitment, order, and togetherness. In the heart of medieval Scotland, the diet may not have overflowed with abundance, yet it possessed a remarkable strength to endure. Crafted from oats, kale, broths, and salted fish, it told the tale of a people molded by their environment. A tough land where the earth was barren, the climate unforgiving, and the essence of life required a focus on necessity rather than luxury. Yet out of this simplicity came traditions that endured for centuries, forming a cultural identity tied as much to the hearth as to the battlefield. What made the Scottish table unique was its reliance on foods that outsiders often mocked. English travelers looked down upon the Scots for their reliance on oats, while those from the continent regarded their simple fare as lacking when set against the lavish spreads of French banquets or Italian feasts. Yet, that critique overlooked the essence. Oats, kale, and herring were not mere symbols of hardship. They stood as symbols of ingenuity. They allowed ordinary people to withstand winters that might have broken less hardy communities. They forged a Scotland that thrived on the bounty of its land and sea, drawing strength from the resources that nature generously offered. This diet embraced a sense of inclusivity and shared purpose. As the nobles reveled in venison, spiced roasts, and the finest imported luxuries during their grand feasts, they too found their sustenance in the humble oats and nourishing broth that graced their tables in everyday life. Brave soldiers marched into the fray, while serene monks found solace in their cloisters. Crofters diligently tended to their sheep, and children played in the warmth of smoky cottages, all united by the simple sustenance that nourished their lives. In the heart of medieval Scotland, few experiences wove the fabric of daily life as intimately as the warm embrace of porridge at dawn or the comforting bowl of kale broth that graced the table at dusk. The traditions surrounding food continued to thrive. Bannocks, once lovingly cooked on hot stones by the fire, have woven their way into the tapestry of seasonal festivals, lingering long after the echoes of the Middle Ages faded. The kale yard, that quaint little patch of greens beside each cottage, transformed into a cherished emblem of homey tradition, while the cycles of fasting and feasting, guided by the church, resonated through the tapestry of later folk customs and joyous celebrations. Perhaps the most remarkable gift of this unpretentious diet was the strength to persevere. The Scots dined not for the sake of show. They dined not merely to survive, but in that act, they wove a culinary tapestry that, while unadorned, nourished the body and soul, reflecting their essence in every humble bite. Even today, porridge, oatcakes, and hearty broths linger in our memories, not merely as sustenance, but as cherished symbols of a rich heritage, evoking the resilience and creativity of our forebears who thrived with little more than patience, ingenuity, and the humble oat. In the heart of medieval Scotland, the table, though lacking in opulence, whispered tales of resilience. It bore witness to a quiet strength sustained by humble bannocks, hearty broth, and the vibrant green of kale. As the summer of 1099 approached, the valiant warriors of the First Crusade had become mere shadows of the formidable army that had once departed from Europe 3 years prior. They embarked on a journey, united under the sacred banner, summoned by Pope Urban II to reclaim the revered Holy Land. Some were propelled by their unwavering beliefs, while others were motivated by a deep yearning for territory, riches, or the chance to atone for their misdeeds. Yet, regardless of their motivations, the journey across vast lands had stripped away any remaining illusions. Those who endured bore the marks of struggle, reduced from a mighty host of nearly 60,000 crusaders to a mere 12,000 warriors. Through trials and tribulations, their path had transformed them in ways they could never have imagined. As they journeyed across Anatolia, they faced the searing heat, unexpected attacks from Seljuk horsemen, and devastating shortages of food and water. In the year 1098, at Antioch, they endured a siege that would haunt the annals of history, battling starvation amidst squalor, subsisting on tattered leather while the dead amassed around them. Numerous souls abandoned their posts, while others succumbed to the relentless grip of starvation or disease. But when the city ultimately crumbled, it only fortified the spirits of those who remained. They saw themselves as divinely selected vessels, safeguarded through trials and tribulations for the ultimate performance. As they journeyed towards Palestine, the Crusaders embodied a unique blend of warriors and seekers, each step a testament to their dual purpose. With unshod feet, the clerics strode in harmony with the armored knights, their voices rising in sacred hymns as they traversed the sun-baked valleys. Humble folk bore the sacred remnants of saints, seeking to ignite bravery within their hearts. With horses scarce and their vigor waning, the men stumbled under the weight of their corroded armor. Yet they pressed onward, fueled by a deep-seated passion and the unwavering belief that every trial would find its reward upon their arrival in Jerusalem, a beacon for the men of Europe. Jerusalem was more than merely a city. In the very core of Christendom, where the crucifixion and resurrection unfolded, lay the sacred ground where the divine met the earthly realm. They had been told by the preachers that catching sight of its walls would bring them nearer to salvation itself. And so, when at last the holy city emerged on the horizon in June 1099, the army fell to their knees, overcome with emotion, weeping, praying, and singing the Te Deum. They stood at the precipice of the world, where the final chapter met the dawn of their most formidable challenge. Yet the city of Jerusalem was not a prize to be seized without challenge. Within the formidable walls, valiant guardians of the Fatimid Caliphate prepared to stand firm against any challenge. The Crusaders, fatigued yet aflame with passion, readied themselves for the ultimate siege that would determine the destiny of the city and resonate through the ages of history. As the Crusaders beheld Jerusalem for the first time in June 1099, a sense of wonder swiftly transformed into a heavy foreboding. The holy city stood not as a fragile outpost, but as a bastion of unwavering faith and enduring stone. The stout walls ascended majestically from the rugged earth, adorned with towering spires and fortified entrances. From the Mount of Olives, the Crusaders beheld the golden dome of the rock shimmering in the sunlight, a vision that stirred within them a mix of yearning and steely determination. Within the walls, a crowd of around 30,000 souls gathered, each one poised for the unfolding events ahead. Jerusalem found itself in the hands of the Fatimid Caliphate, who had seized it from the Seljuk Turks just a year prior. The governor, Iftikhar al-Dawla, was a figure of great experience and unyielding determination, and he swiftly set about fortifying the defenses. Provisions of grain and water were gathered, cisterns brimming and the gates firmly secured. People of diverse faiths, Jews, Muslims, and Eastern Christians, sought refuge, fully aware that the tempest raging beyond their defenses was not just any army, but a formidable legion of warriors who believed that divine will was on their side, urging them toward triumph. Yet the Crusaders found themselves far from prepared to embark on a siege. They had journeyed through vast deserts, their provisions dwindling and their steeds on the brink of exhaustion. As the sun dipped below the horizon, a band of noble knights chose to dismount, joining forces with the humble infantry. Together, they stood shoulder to shoulder with peasants, pilgrims, and priests, united in their cause. In a land where sustenance was a rare treasure, the precious drops of water were drawn from far-off springs, compelling weary souls to traverse endless miles beneath the relentless sun, all for a mere taste of life. With hunger clawing at their insides, the foul odor of death from past skirmishes lingered in the air, enveloping their tattered camp. Yet their desperation only fueled their unwavering resolve. Without the right siege engines, the Crusaders initially attempted to scale the walls using ladders, stones, and any makeshift tools they could gather. From the heavens, arrows descended like a storm, while searing oil cascaded upon their foes, and the defenders mocked as relentless waves crashed against the sturdy ramparts. The Crusaders soon understood that sheer might would not suffice to conquer Jerusalem. They sought towers, rams, and unwavering discipline, and for that they required the gift of time. Yet hope lingered on, buoyed by unwavering belief. With bare feet upon the ancient stones, the clergy wove through the city walls, their voices rising in a melodic chant of psalms. They bore sacred relics, invoking the heavens to bestow blessings upon their noble struggle. To the brave souls standing guard, it appeared as sheer chaos. To the besiegers, it was a sign that triumph was destined to unfold. The siege of Jerusalem commenced, a tale woven with threads of endurance, faith, and sacrifice. For the brave souls of the crusade, the path ahead was one of unwavering resolve. The city loomed ahead, a treasure waiting to be claimed, and they would either seize it or perish at its threshold. In the initial days of the siege, a harsh truth emerged with undeniable clarity. The walls of Jerusalem stood resolute, impervious to mere ladders and the folly of blind bravery. Upon their arrival at the Holy City, the Crusaders found themselves in dire need of siege engines, great towers, powerful rams, and fearsome catapults, yet they came nearly empty-handed. In the shadow of Jerusalem, the weary army found itself on the brink of despair. Supplies were running low, and the precious wood essential for their siegecraft was a rare treasure amidst the rugged hills. Desperation enveloped the scene with alarming swiftness. The provisions dwindled to nearly nothing. Bread transformed into a cherished recollection. In the struggle for existence, men relied on the humble roots, the fragrant herbs, and the meager scraps that fate would allow them to uncover. The water was far more troubling. Springs were distant from the camp, where the defenders cunningly poisoned some or set traps for supply runs. Men succumbed to the parching heat, their bodies collapsing under the unyielding sun, while creatures of the earth lay lifeless in the barren dust. Once revered as the pride of knightly cavalry, horses met a tragic fate, their bodies reduced to mere sustenance, while their bones lay abandoned to the elements. A haunting reminder of their former glory. A shadow of disease slithered through the famished ranks, yet against all odds their spirits remained unbroken. They had journeyed too far to retreat, with fervor in their hearts. The leaders of the crusade, Godfrey of Bouillon, Raymond of Toulouse, Tancred, and their valiant companions, gathered their troops, igniting their spirits with impassioned oratory. With fervent voices, the preachers conveyed to the men that Jerusalem was no ordinary city. It was the sacred ground where Christ had met his fate and triumphed over death. To forsake the siege was to forsake hope itself. That unwavering belief bestowed upon the famished warriors a power that transcended mere physicality. Fortune, or perhaps fate, soon brought forth exactly what they sought. In the heart of the land, scouts ventured forth, discovering lush groves of trees nestled near Samaria. With great care, caravans were summoned, their journey marked by the watchful eyes of guardians, as they transported the precious timber back to their destination. Among the crusaders, skilled carpenters, artisans, and laborers who had embarked on this pilgrimage began their work with dedication. In the sweltering sun, the rhythmic clang of hammers and the sharp bite of saws filled the air as rudimentary siege engines slowly emerged from the chaos of creation. Wooden towers ascended, each plank meticulously placed, their frames bound together with sturdy rope and rawhide. From the mighty trunks of fallen trees, battering rams were crafted, their formidable heads encased in iron salvaged from pots, tools, and even the remnants of weapons. From the towering walls, the defenders jeered, launching a barrage of insults that flew as swiftly as the arrows and stones they cast down upon their foes. Yet, as time flowed onward, the Crusaders gradually turned their desperate encampment into a bustling hub of siegecraft. Every tower that rose, every ram that struck, whispered of a promise yet to unfold. Soon, the barriers would face their trial, not through raw bravery, but through the ingenuity of finely crafted devices. Yet the sands of time were slipping away from their grasp. Desire for sustenance clawed at the soul, while the relentless ache of thirst haunted every thought. And the city stood before them, a prize yet to be claimed. The Crusaders found themselves poised on the brink of either glorious victory or devastating defeat. As the destiny of Jerusalem teetered precariously, reliant on whether their towers could touch its noble ramparts. As the sun rose in early July of the year 1099, the Crusaders found themselves teetering on the edge of despair, with hunger clawing at their insides and water a distant memory. The brave souls of Jerusalem faced a relentless barrage of arrows, stones, and derision from the towering walls above. The siege towers loomed ever higher, yet the spirits of the defenders faltered with the relentless march of time. In the darkest hour, when hope flickered like a dying ember, the leaders found solace in their unwavering faith, a force as formidable as any blade. The clergy and preachers declared that the army's trials were a sacred trial of faith. To seize the sacred city, they proclaimed, the Crusaders must cleanse their souls. On July 8th, with bare feet and no weapons in hand, a multitude of soldiers, nobles, and priests moved in a solemn procession around the city walls. High above, the relics of saints were borne aloft as hymns filled the air and psalms resonated through the arid hills. Leading the charge was Peter the Hermit, the passionate orator whose fervent words had once ignited a continent to embrace the call to arms. He guided them through a journey of atonement, emphasizing that true repentance was the key to earning divine grace. From the heights of the battlements, the Muslim defenders beheld in astonishment as their foes transformed the siege into a grand spectacle. To them, it appeared as sheer madness. Yet for the Crusaders, this moment marked a profound change. Once bitter rivals, they found themselves in a moment of vulnerability, shedding tears as they shared their confessions and vowed to stand together in newfound solidarity. In the annals of history, it was said that the grand display echoed the sacred procession around Jericho, and there was a fervent belief that just as those ancient fortifications had crumbled, so too would the walls of Jerusalem. The effect on spirits was felt right away. The soldiers resumed their duties atop the towers, invigorated and full of renewed spirit. Even those who were frail and unwell discovered a newfound vigor, believing that the very heavens had taken their side. In just a matter of days, a fleet from Genoa made its way to Jaffa, carrying with it skilled artisans, iron, and much-needed provisions. To the Crusaders, it felt as though the heavens themselves had bestowed their approval, affirming that their sacrifices had not gone unnoticed. The siege engines stood resolute, their wheels encased in iron, while hides were meticulously stretched over frames, prepared to withstand the flames of battle. Within the heart of the city, the guardians readied themselves for the tempest that loomed on the horizon. They gathered jars brimming with oil and pitch, preparing to unleash them upon the towers. Sharpened spears were at the ready, and stones were meticulously arranged for their catapults. Yet beyond the fortress, the camp of the Crusaders blazed with a sacred intensity. The procession transformed the siege from a mere act of desperation into a sacred endeavor, instilling in the hungry souls the unwavering belief that the walls of Jerusalem would soon crumble, not solely through might but by divine decree. On July 13th, 1099, the moment of anticipation finally arrived. As the siege towers stood tall and the rams awaited their moment, the Crusaders unleashed their fervent charge upon Jerusalem. The air was alive with the blaring of trumpets, the rhythmic pounding of drums, and the fervent cries of Deus Vult, God wills it, echoing like thunder through the dry valley. Men, driven by weeks of hunger, launched themselves against the walls with a wild intensity fueled by their desperation and unwavering faith. The defenders faced them with a fierce intensity. From the heights of the battlements, arrows sliced through the air, stones tumbled down with a thunderous roar, and pots of searing oil and pitch erupted against the wooden structures, painting the scene with chaos and fire. The mighty siege towers advanced, their timbers creaking and groaning beneath the burden of warriors clad in armor. Each stride faced opposition. Brave defenders ignited bundles of brush, their hopes soaring as flames danced toward the towers, seeking to catch fire before reaching the walls. With fervor, the brave souls surged forward, buckets of water in hand, shields raised high, battling the encroaching flames with every ounce of their strength. Godfrey of Bouillon aimed his tower at the northern wall, while Raymond of Toulouse pushed fiercely from the south. In this tale, the plan unfolded with elegance, to dazzle the defenders with a flurry of assaults from various angles, compelling them to disperse their forces. As the night cloaked the land, the towers crept nearer, shrouded in shadows, while rams unleashed their iron-tipped wrath upon the gates. Yet the steadfast walls of Jerusalem, crafted to endure the might of empires, stood resolute. The battle raged on without mercy. Once there were men who, despite the scorching sun, fell to the ground from heat stroke, only to muster their strength and rise once more to ascend the ladders before them. Dark arrows filled the heavens, while the atmosphere was heavy with the acrid scent of smoke and the haunting echoes of cries. From the towering heights, the Crusaders unleashed a barrage of stones and bolts, striving to carve out a path on the ramparts for their impending assault. With a fierce determination, the defenders wielded grappling hooks and poles, pushing the ladders aside and sending the armored men plummeting to their doom. For 2 long days, the clash unfolded, each moment steeped in tension, yet neither side could claim victory. The engines of the Crusaders roared with fury, yet their soldiers wavered, met with jeers from the defenders perched upon the walls, reveling in their downfall. Yet, on the 15th day of July, the winds of fate shifted. In the stillness of the night, Godfrey's engineers deftly affixed wheels to their tower, maneuvering it toward a vulnerable section of the wall in the northeast. As the first light of dawn broke, the brave defenders stood resolute before the tower, aware that their fortifications were but a fragile shield in this moment of peril. The Crusaders advanced with a fierce resolve, their spirits ignited anew. The onslaught had transformed into something beyond mere conflict. In a world where the end loomed, intertwined with hope and retribution, a tale unfolded. In the heart of Jerusalem, a palpable tension filled the air as the Crusaders readied themselves for a final, fateful assault, a moment that would either see the city fall into their grasp or witness their very souls laid to rest among its ancient stones. As dawn broke on July 15, 1099, the air was thick with anticipation, and the final assault surged toward its peak. The mighty siege tower of Godfrey of Bouillon advanced, its wheels lamenting as they traversed the charred ground. The defenders on the northern walls steeled themselves for the impending clash, unaware that the Crusaders had cunningly repositioned the tower under the cover of darkness, targeting a vulnerable spot near the northeast corner. As dawn broke, the grand edifice stood tall against the horizon, resembling a colossal wooden peak. From the heights of the tower, arrows cascaded down, forging a way forward. Amidst the fortress's sturdy defenses, men toiled with fervor, lowering drawbridges and positioning scaling ladders against the towering battlements. Finally, the time had arrived. With fervor, the Crusaders charged across the tower's gangway, engaging in fierce hand-to-hand combat with the defenders. With shields firmly in place, swords clashed, and warriors fell from the heights of the ramparts. It is said that Godfrey was one of the pioneers to tread upon the walls, taking the lead with his actions. Chroniclers painted a vivid picture of him releasing arrows from his bow, urging his men to press forward with unwavering determination. With each passing moment, the defenders found themselves slipping further away from their stronghold. In a moment of great significance, a brave crusader cleaved through the standard of the Fatimids, triumphantly hoisting the cross in its stead. The scene ignited a spark among the besiegers below, who erupted with a fresh wave of enthusiasm. In the midst of the unfolding saga, the forces of Raymond of Toulouse relentlessly assailed the fortifications close to Mount Zion. Amidst the tumult of battle, they faced fierce resistance, yet the clever distraction wove a tapestry of confusion, scattering the defenders and hindering their ability to unite against Godfrey's relentless assault. As the sun reached its zenith, the northern wall had fallen into disrepair. Like a relentless tide, the Crusaders surged into the city, ascending ladders, breaching gates, and crashing through doors. Within those walls, pandemonium unfurled. The defenders, weary yet resolute, slipped through the winding alleys, ever pursued by the unyielding tide of invaders. A wave of fear swept through the streets of Jerusalem, uniting Muslims, Jews, and Eastern Christians in a moment of shared dread as the Crusaders breached the city's defenses. The sacred city, strong and resolute, had at last been penetrated. For the Crusaders, the moment unfolded as a tapestry of triumph and vindication. After enduring years of hunger, danger, and unfathomable trials, they finally stepped into the city they had vowed to reclaim. The once impenetrable walls of Jerusalem crumbled, not merely under the weight of steel and timber, but to the fervent belief of an army convinced that divine will guided their triumph. Yet what ensued would transform victory into a nightmare, a bloodbath that would etch itself into the annals of Jerusalem's history for generations to remember. When the walls of Jerusalem fell on July 15, 1099, the Crusaders surged into the city, and the streets were stained crimson. What started as a glorious victory quickly spiraled into a scene of chaos and bloodshed. Chroniclers, from both the Christian and Muslim realms, painted vivid scenes of horror that left even those battle-hardened contemporaries in shock. Fueled by fervent faith, a thirst for retribution, and the primal instinct to endure, the Crusaders swept through, leaving no one unscathed in their relentless march. In the midst of turmoil, the invaders moved like shadows, leaving a trail of despair as they descended upon the homes of Muslims, Jews, and even some Eastern Christians, each life touched by the chaos that unfolded. In the sacred courtyard of the Al-Aqsa Mosque, a tragic tale unfolded as thousands lost their lives. According to Raymond of Aguilers, a source from the Crusader era, the carnage was so immense that our warriors found themselves wading through blood that reached their ankles. To the Crusaders, this was a manifestation of celestial retribution. To the people of Jerusalem, it was the end of days. None was spared. Flames danced upon the rooftops as cherished possessions were snatched away and sacred places fell into ruin. In a tragic turn of events, those seeking safety within the walls of their synagogue faced a horrific fate as flames engulfed the structure, leaving them with no escape. In the shadowy alleys and bustling markets, both defenders of faith and innocent civilians met their tragic fates, falling like leaves in a storm. In the midst of the chaos, even the livestock met their untimely end. The anguished cries of the dying intertwined with the fervent chants of the Crusaders, who were convinced they were purifying the city in the name of God. Yet amidst the chaos, deeper meanings illuminated their path. With fervor in their hearts, the Crusaders hurried to the sacred church of the Holy Sepulchre, where they knelt in prayer, tears of gratitude streaming down their faces. For them, the massacre was not just an act of violence, but a profound cleansing of Jerusalem, a sacred reclamation for Christendom after enduring centuries under Islamic dominion. In their gaze, the essence of purity demanded a toll of crimson. For the broader Muslim community, the massacre transformed into a scar that would never fade. The tale of the massacre traveled swiftly through the lands of the Middle East, leaving both leaders and the everyday folk in a state of disbelief. Jerusalem, cherished as the third holiest city in Islam, had not merely been seized, but sullied. The harshness etched itself into the fabric of memory, igniting a relentless cycle of retribution that would shape the ages ahead. In their triumph, the Crusaders felt they had accomplished the divine purpose. Yet their victory was marred by torrents of blood, and the slaughter of 1099 would resonate as one of the bleakest tales in the enduring saga for the sacred city. In the aftermath of Jerusalem's fall, the tumult gradually yielded to a semblance of order, at least as seen through the eyes of those who claimed victory. The aftermath of the massacre cast a haunting stillness over the city, where the streets lay strewn with lifeless bodies, and the wells and cisterns were suffocated by the crimson tide. Yet for the Crusaders this was a sacred purification. They thought they had returned Jerusalem to the embrace of Christendom, and now a question hung in the air. What guidance should be given for its governance? The initial journey began with a sacred transformation. Barefoot Crusaders made their way to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, cleansing its floors and renewing its sacred purpose for Christian worship. Clerics gathered in reverence, honoring the sacred ground they held to be the resting place of Christ. Ancient relics were lifted towards the heavens, while hymns resonated through walls that still bore the marks of conflict. For the victors, this moment marked the pinnacle of their journey, a testament to the divine favor bestowed upon their sacrifices. Yet soon after, the shadows of politics began to loom over their sacred triumph. With Jerusalem now in their grasp, the question of leadership loomed large. Raymond of Toulouse, a figure of immense wealth and ambition, turned down the crown, asserting that he would not don a golden crown in the place where Christ had borne a crown of thorns. The mantle then passed to Godfrey of Bouillon, who embraced the role yet chose to call himself not king, but rather the advocate of the Holy Sepulchre. His title embodied a blend of modesty and cunning. Jerusalem emerged not merely as a secular realm, but as the very bastion of Christendom on this earth. In the wake of this new Latin dominion, Jerusalem underwent a profound transformation. Mosques were repurposed as churches, the treasures of Islamic sacred spaces were seized, and a fresh set of laws took hold. The city emerged as the vibrant core of the Crusader states, a Latin Christian stronghold intricately woven into the fabric of the Muslim realm. From the shores of Europe, brave pilgrims set forth, their path now marked by the valor of knights. The Crusaders, resolute in their mission, began to strengthen their hold, fully aware that the Muslim forces would soon rise to reclaim what was lost. Yet beneath the victory there lingered a delicate vulnerability. In a time of great peril, a small garrison stood resolute, their resources dwindling as foes encircled them from all sides. To the south, the Fatimid Caliphate, and to the east, the Seljuk Turks, both regarded the loss of Jerusalem as something utterly unacceptable. Even with the emblem of faith adorning its heights, the city stood ever vigilant against looming dangers. The rise of Crusader rule marked not the conclusion of the battle for Jerusalem, but the dawn of a fresh saga, one that would shape the dynamics between Christian and Muslim forces for years to come. The conquest of Jerusalem in July 1099 transcended mere military triumph. It was a moment that transformed the very fabric of the medieval realm. For the Crusaders, it was the realization of a sacred quest. After 3 grueling years of relentless marching, enduring starvation, and fierce battles, they had captured the most sacred city in Christendom. In the annals of Europe, they were celebrated as valiant champions. In sacred spaces, their victory echoed from the heart of Rome to the elegant streets of Paris. The First Crusade unfolded like a grand tale, surpassing all hopes and demonstrating that the realms of Christendom could come together to accomplish what once appeared unattainable. Yet for the Muslim world, the siege unfolded as a profound tragedy. Whispers of the massacre traveled like wildfire through the lands of Egypt, Syria, and far beyond. Jerusalem, revered in Islam for the Prophet's night journey, had become a canvas stained with blood. For countless believers, the defeat resonated as both a deep shame and a rallying cry. The year 1099 etched itself into the annals of history, igniting a flame of resistance that would inspire formidable leaders such as Zengi, Nur ad-Din, and ultimately Saladin, each pledging to reclaim the city for Islamic sovereignty. For the Jewish communities of Jerusalem, the siege unfolded as a profound and heart-rending calamity. In the wake of the synagogue fires, countless souls met their tragic end, while others were pursued amidst the turmoil. Those who survived bore haunting narratives of terror as they journeyed into exile. Their suffering etched yet another chapter in the enduring tale of persecution that defined Jewish existence in the medieval era. The conquest birthed a novel entity, the Latin Kingdom of Jerusalem, reshaping the political landscape. In the annals of history, Godfrey of Bouillon emerged as the inaugural ruler, guiding the city to become the esteemed capital of the Crusade estates, delicate bastions of Western Christendom nestled within the very heart of the Middle East. Upon the hills, majestic castles stood tall while valiant knights patrolled the winding roads. A steady flow of pilgrims journeyed forth, drawn by faith toward the sacred Holy Sepulchre, shielded by the unwavering camaraderie of their fellow Christians. Yet the realm was forever on the edge, encircled by unfriendly forces and reliant on aid from distant lands across the sea. The siege, a crucible of conflict, forged unyielding attitudes on both sides. Across the lands of Europe, enchanting tales of miraculous victories wove a narrative that suggested divine intervention was at play in the Crusades. In the realm of the Islamic world, the massacre of Jerusalem etched itself into the collective memory, a haunting crime that called for retribution. The conflict of beliefs transcended mere boundaries. It was a profound journey, steeped in meaning and bound to echo through the ages. The siege of 1099 unfolded as more than a mere bloody conquest of a city. It was the spark that set ablaze 2 centuries of crusades, a relentless cycle of holy war and vengeance that would leave its mark on the medieval world. Jerusalem had fallen, yet tranquility had slipped away. The stones whispered tales of triumph and retribution, a legacy etched in the annals of time.